Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the August 8th meeting of the Columbus City Council. We're so glad to have you here this morning. It's a little rainy outside, but that's okay. We're going to be getting the business done inside here. We have a special friend who's here to provide the invocation today. I had a minute to talk with him. He said he prays for us all the time. We can use it all the time, so we appreciate you. Larry Biggers, Reverend Larry Biggers with Northside Worship Center, if you come forward and provide us our invocation today. Right here. Yeah.
Before I bring the prayer, I want to extend an invitation to all of you to come to the 20th Annual Unity Service. That service is a service at Northside Worship Center at 1901 Whittlesey. Some of you received a letter already, and it is an opportunity for us to give honor and exalt the Lord Jesus Christ, and to give appreciation for those of you who serve in our community in such diligent ways, and we appreciate it very much. It's our small token of ways of wanting to say thank you for serving. Could we bow our heads? Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you in praise and thanksgiving. Lord, we invite you to come and give us understanding and wisdom. Lord, most of us have a hard time just deciding what we want for breakfast. It becomes even complicated when we decide where do we want to go. Choices are huge. And yet, Lord, you have chosen mere men and women to set in a place of decision-making that affects people across this community. Lord, we need your wisdom. We need your guidance. We open our hearts and open our understanding, and we invite you, Lord, to come. Give us, Lord, the understanding to make decisions that are for the good of everyone. Lord, each one of us comes with our own personal agendas, our own personal desires, but this council sets to make decisions on the big picture, on the circumstances that reach far beyond this moment in time. Their decisions and, Lord, their discretions in this council impacts other decisions, impacts other circumstances in ways that many of us would never understand. So, Lord, we need you to look inside, guide us, give us patience, give us wisdom, give us gentleness. We ask you to cover all that is said and done. We ask that you surround us with your precious Spirit and undergird us, Lord, with an understanding that only you can give. Lord, our desire and our passion is together that we serve to benefit this special and unique community that you have given us oversight in our portion. We ask, Lord, that you bless us in thy name. We give you the praise, our Lord and Savior. Amen. Amen.
Reverend Biggers, thank you so much for joining this morning, and thank you for those kind and encouraging words, and look forward to seeing you.
It's my honor.
Thank you. All right, well, it looks like our pledgers didn't make it this morning, but, oh, okay, here they come. Uh-oh. They might need a little bit of help. Boy, they're ready to go. They're already pledging. Sweet, sweet. Yeah, Tiasha, will you help them get organized a little bit? Oh. All right, well, how are you all doing this morning? Doing all right? Well, these little ones we have with us today are from Generation Knowledge and Care Center, and they're going to help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And so I'm going to ask that you all stand and prepare for them to start the pledge.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. You guys are so good. I want you to say your name and how old you are. Tell us your name and how old you are.
I'm 6 and my name is Juliana.
Okay, great. Yes, sir.
I'm Zayden. 4.
4. Okay, great.
Come here. I'm 3.
3. Okay.
I'm 4.
All right, good.
I'm 4. I'm all. I'm 4. Brody. Shawana. 3. Thank you. 3 years old.
All right, fantastic. And ma'am, please introduce yourself.
My name is Shanana.
And you got a little one with you. Who's the shy one?
Yes. Say your name.
No.
Oh, that's okay.
Her name Kyla. She's 4.
Okay. Well, you guys did a really, really good job. Will you come back sometime real soon and help us out again? Maybe? They're gonna think about it. We'll negotiate a reappearance. How about that? Let's give them another round of applause because you guys were super. Thank you for coming out today. We know it takes some effort to get everybody together, so thank you. All right, we're going to start off. We've got Randy Lomax here with the Board of Tax Assessors. He's going to come forward and give us an update. We've had several presentations over the last several weeks, and we're anxious to hear an update as to where we are, numbers. What's going on, Randy? Tell us about it.
Good morning. As of last night, a total of 4,669 appeals have been filed. That represents 6.71% of the total parcels in Muskogee County. Of the 4,600 appeals that have been filed, 1,210 appeals have been received, processed, and reviewed by the tax assessor's office. Of that amount, 619 appeals have been recommended for reduction in value, which means we have notified or have sent letters or in the process of sending letters to the property owners telling them we've reviewed their appeals and have reduced the value that we previously provided to them. 463 appeals, we have recommended no change, and we have notified the property owner of that. And then we've got approximately 128 that we're still in the process of conducting what is referred to as an administrative review or division manager review, which means it may just be an issue of a homestead exemption being improperly removed that we're going to have to adjust, or it may be some other unusual factor that a division manager or the deputy appraiser is going to have to review. So we are still receiving appeals. The appeal deadline is not till next Monday. However, we are diligently and expeditiously as possible processing those appeals and trying to notify the property owners of any adjustments that are being made so as to alleviate their concerns. We would like to confirm what we had notified council, that if someone files an appeal, when they receive their bill for this year, they will receive the lower of the 2016 taxes or 85% of the tax bill. So if they file the appeal, they will not be burdened with the increase in tax until the appeal is resolved. And be happy to answer any questions.
Sure, we got some questions. And do say, we want to mention again that the Tax Assessors Board has expanded their hours to try and accommodate people's
Till
schedules.
7 o'clock.
And so is it, what is it, 9 to 7 or?
I think it's 8 to 7.
8 to 7, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday, and then the deadline is the 14th?
The Monday.
Which is Monday, okay. All right, we've got a few folks that want to speak. We've got Counselor Allen.
Yes,
Thank you,
sir.
Mayor. Randy, would you give me that number again, the total number you've received?
Total number received, 4,669.
Okay. And walk us through the appeal form. If someone files an appeal,
Right.
that is to the Board of Equalization.
No, sir, that they actually file the appeal with the tax assessor's office.
Okay.
Okay, and they have a couple of options on where to take the appeal. They can take the appeal to the Board of Equalization. They can request arbitration, or with the consent and concurrence of the tax assessor's office, it can go straight to Superior Court. But Councilor Al, the important thing to remember is once a property owner files the appeal with us, we are statutorily required to review that appeal in-house. And that is sort of like a red flag when we receive the appeal, that we need to look at that specific property, that specific value, and we have to make a determination as to whether a change is warranted or whether no change is warranted. So if there's something that's blatantly wrong with it, that's the first opportunity to get it fixed. And we get it corrected at that point, notify the property owner, and, quite often, we hope there will be no need to go further.
Okay. How do they get to the Board of Equalization?
Once we conduct the review, we will send them a letter telling them the results. If the property owner still is not satisfied, they can simply tell us they want to go forward, and that appeal will be forwarded to the Board of Equalization, who will conduct I don't want to call it a trial because it's just a mini hearing.
So there's no additional forms required?
No, sir.
That request would be, the form is utilized to honor that request to go to the Board of Equalization?
They will need to notify us that they want to go forward.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah, but that's important, I think. What he's saying is, once you send that letter out, I don't want to put words in Councilor Allen's mouth, but I think he wants to make sure that form is all they need to do. But I think what I hear you saying is, once the letter goes out to say, we've lowered your thing, we've lowered your amount, is this okay with you? They have to let you know,
It's called a 30-day letter.
no, it's not okay with me, I still want to appeal.
That is
Right.
correct. They have to if they do not like that value, they have to notify us that they want to go forward.
So if someone comes in on the 14th and they do not like the results, you let them know that then, or you let them know that in writing?
We will let them, if someone comes in next Monday afternoon and files an appeal, we will review that appeal, review the property, we will send them a letter telling them the results. They may not get that letter for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but at some point, and then they can notify us that they don't agree with it, and we will forward it on to the Board of Equalization.
Well, I want to go to the timeline of the letter. If they
Okay.
come in on Monday, the 14th, and you notify them a week later, they have 30 days from receiving that letter
Yes, sir.
to let you know, from
Thir-
receiving the letter,
30 days from the date of the letter.
from the date of the letter. But
Yes.
you will do that in a timely fashion so they don't
Oh, sure.
get it and have a week to respond
Sure.
or something like that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
And Counselor Woodson was asking, I want to make sure I gave her correct numbers. You said that you had reviewed, I think it was 1,210
Yes, ma'am.
of the 4669, and that 619 had been lowered. Now, are you going to continue after the 14th? The Board of Tax Assessors, Tax Assessor's Office is going to continue to review.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so it doesn't just end.
Ab-
They continue to review up until the time they have to certify to the state that, whatever the number of appeals are.
We will continue to review those appeals even after we submit the digest to the Tax Commissioner's Office. We will continue to review the appeals until all the appeals have been reviewed.
Okay,
There's no reason to stop reviewing them.
okay, all right, thank you. We have Counselor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Morning, Randy. A
Morning.
couple of quick questions. I just want to make sure I got my numbers right or I understood what you're saying. You said of the 4669 appeals that you guys have received, that have been filed,
That is correct.
1,210 have been processed administratively. So there were 619 that you recommend a reduction of value.
That is correct.
And you said 463, you recommended no change.
That is correct.
All right, there's a gap there of about 110,
That is
150.
correct. There are 29 appeals that are in administrative review. Those are the ones that may have something like a homestead that was removed that should not have been removed. It's not a valuation question. There's some type of administrative issue that needs to be reviewed, and it's been reviewed by an administrative manager. There's a 99 appeals that the divisions have passed to the deputy or the deputy appraiser, John Williams, for him to review. Certain questions that maybe one of the appraisers cannot answer. And that was the 128 total that I mentioned.
So that 120 some odd are really just more of a technical type of issue than it is a comparable
Well,
issue for
the
finding value?
29 are definitely technical issues. The 99 are more complex reviews.
Okay. All right, and the other question I had, are there any provisions made for any instances where a citizen has been having trouble through no fault of their own getting the notice on a piece of property, and if because we're getting close to the 14th, and I'm thinking, you know, some of the folks that are still waiting on those may be in a situation where they don't understand the process and they're a little slow. I don't want them to miss their opportunity. Case in point, my dad is 85, but he's a lot sharper than I'll ever be. But he's been trying now for about 2 weeks to get a notice, and the last communication, I think they apologized. They said they just goofed. They made an error, but it's the 8th, and he still has not received the notice. So my concern is if he gets this, let's say the 12th or 13th, actually, he's supposed to be out of town some during that week. Is there any provision made for any one-offs or special instances where maybe because of some internal slowdowns, the citizen didn't get their notice?
No, sir, I don't think there's any special provisions for that. The information that would be set forth in the official tax matter notice is also on the Board of the Tax Assessor's Office website.
Yes, sir, and I understand, and I apologize for interrupting you, but my
okay.
point is, there's an awful lot of people in the community that may not feel as comfortable using the website.
Right.
And so even though there's that immediacy that is offered through that portal, that may not be a viable option. Because some of the people that we've listened to, Councilor Garrett invited me to one of his town meetings, and there were some people in that room that frankly just didn't have a computer or didn't, we take it for granted, but there's a segment of the population out there that is just not going to be comfortable doing that. And I just want to make sure if it's not their fault, and I know that with taxes, we typically say some of the notices are really just a courtesy because you should know. Right. But it just seems like there may be, if my next door neighbor, who I happen to be related to, encountered that, there's bound to be others that have encountered that.
And I understand. I'm not positive of this, Councilor, but I can check on it. I think there's actually a return mail webpage that shows if someone's letter has been sent back to us, that you can go online and look and see if there's mail that was sent to you that was not delivered for some reason.
And we keep going back to the
web.
To the web. And
Yes,
frankly, in this particular instance, the tax assessor's office said, hey, we're sorry, we accidentally put the street address for the property in your, the street number and in your street address, which doesn't exist, so it may not be returned.
There is not a statutory provision that says if you did not receive the notice, then you're not subject to the August 14th deadline. There's not a provision for that.
Okay, thank you.
That sounds antithetical to the law.
Unfortunately,
usually,
it is.
I mean, notice, nobody's rights run, it's due process, basically due process. Anyway, I just, if you could look into that, that just seems, it sounds like it's, I mean, surely, you tell us, I mean, how large of a problem is that? I would think transposing somebody's numbers and it not being delivered is a fairly rare occurrence. I
Right.
hope you haven't heard.
We have not heard of a lot of instances like that.
Right. But I certainly would take the position that that's no notice. I mean, if it was not sent out, if it was not addressed properly by inversion, mistake, or whatever, would not be proper.
It
process, no
may
due
be
process.
something we would have to address on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and it may be something, too, that another statute just a general Georgia provision about due process and notice. So maybe you and Clifton can look into that and see. All right, we've got Counselor Thomas.
Mr. Lomax,
Yes,
as
ma'am.
I understand these numbers, 4,659 appeals have been filed, and enough have been processed that you are left with 3,400, roughly 3,400, still to be processed.
Yes, ma'am.
And as I recall some of the presentations that have been made to us, the magic number that has to be achieved in order for things to be put on hold is 5,500, somewhere in that range.
It's a
And
combination.
it has to be on the 14th, right? It has to be that number
No, ma'am.
pending on the 14th.
No, ma'am.
No?
No, ma'am. And there's two answers that I need to give you to your question. It's 8% of the total number of parcels and 8%
I
of the total
understand
value.
that. I understand that.
What happens is we will submit the digest to the tax commissioner's office by the end of the month. At some point, the tax commissioner will take the digest to the revenue commissioner for approval. It's at the time that she submits it to the commissioner that we must be below the 8% threshold. So even if on August 31, we're above the 8%, and we're continuing to work the appeals to reduce it below that amount, and we get it down to the 8% by, say, September the 10th, we're under the threshold. So it's when she submits the digest for approval that we must be under the 8% threshold.
In both parcels and value.
Parcels and value, that is correct. That's the important reason for us to continue to work these appeals after August the 14th.
You know, I just have to say to you, Mr. Lomax, that I'm very disappointed this morning. I had requested that the Board of Tax Assessors be here this morning.
Yes, ma'am.
I do not go anywhere in this town since these tax bills hit the mailboxes that somebody doesn't say something to me about this process. And we have not had an opportunity to talk to or with the Board of Tax Assessors. I understand your position with the Board of Tax Assessors, but you are not a member of the Board of Tax Assessors.
That is correct.
And I want to tell you, I'm very disappointed that none of them could be here this morning. I don't know the reason why they're not here, but they're not.
Yes, ma'am.
I am very, very frustrated with this entire process. Some of the explanations that we have been given as to why these parcels have been taxed the way they are just blows my mind. When we were told that all of the factors were just removed from the parcels of land. Now, one of the examples that I have used here is my friend who has 3 acres, 2 acres with his house that is under homestead exemption, and 1 acre that is not, that went from about a $300 tax to about a $1,500 tax because the floodplain designation was removed from his property. Well, this particular person, quite frankly, has the wherewithal, he has the knowledge, he has the time, he has the intelligence and so forth to appeal that. And I expect that sooner or later, he's going to be one of these 619 whose taxes are reduced. The woman who lives next door to him is 83 years old. She lives by herself. Her son lives in Birmingham. She also has the same kind of property as my friend. In order for her to appeal that, it's going to take quite a bit for that to be done. Luckily, my friend went over and looked at her tax bill, insisted that she show it to him, and contacted her son. Had that not been done, I doubt very seriously that she would have had the wherewithal to appeal that assessment. And my point is, she should not have had to appeal that assessment. Had the floodplain designation not been taken off that piece of property, this wouldn't have happened. And I'm sure that my friend and his neighbor are not the only ones in town that have had that happen to them. I'm very disappointed that the board is not here this morning. There are questions that I would have of the Board of Tax Assessors that, quite frankly, I'm very frustrated that this process seems to be not as big a deal to some people as it is to me. And I think my fellow counselors, as we go out in the community and meet citizens in the grocery store or at church or at, wherever it is that we go.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to address two of the points that you have brought up.
All right.
One of them is the last point about it not being a big deal. Ma'am, having worked with the Board of Tax Assessors for probably 7 or 8 years, I can assure you this revaluation process, installation of the new software is a monumental deal for us. It is a project that we have been intimately involved in since the summer of 2014. It is a big deal. When the few times I've had to go to court, Superior Court, when I walk into the courtroom, one of the first things I tell the judge and the court is I'm there on behalf of the Board of Tax Assessors, but I'm not there to win a case or lose a case. I'm there to try to get the value correct on that piece of property. And we don't determine whether that's a win or a loss. We simply want the right value. That's what the tax office of Muskogee County wants for all 69,500 parcels, is the right value. And we are diligently, 10 hours a day, working to do that. Yes, we have had 6% of the parcels file an appeal. But as of right now, 94% have not filed an appeal. We interpret that to believe that 94% of the parcels and property owners believe their property has been correctly valued. But for those who feel that it has not been correctly valued, we want to be notified, and we want the opportunity to make a change and get the right value on that. And I understand the concern about your neighbor. I don't have a solution for that. But if we're notified, we will look at that property and we will make the change. The second point.
I guess my point is, Mr. Lomax,
Yes,
that
ma'am.
you shouldn't have to have been notified. Had this been done in the way that it has for these many years, and those factors still applied to the property, it would not have been a concern for either one of these people, and they would not have had to file an appeal because their property would have been properly assessed.
Yes, ma'am.
Now that they are filing the appeal, I have every confidence that once again their property is going to be properly assessed. My concern with that is that we are putting the burden on the taxpayer to make that determination, to do something, and they should not have to do that. I don't think they should have that obligation.
I understand. Back to the first point you made about the failure of the members of the Board of Tax Assessors to be here, I will relay that to them. I have been attending their weekly meetings for the last maybe month. But I will say this to the entire council, they meet every Monday, and we would welcome any counselor that wants to come to our meeting and ask questions. If you will simply give us a little warning so we can put you on the agenda, we'll meet again Monday at 9 o'clock, and I'll extend an open invitation. Please call me or call the administrative manager, Leilani Floyd. Let us know. We'll put you on the agenda and be happy to discuss your questions.
And that's not a televised meeting so that the citizens in Columbus can see what's going on, right?
That is correct.
And had they come here, it would have been televised twice a day for the next week.
I can't speak for
Yeah.
the TV.
I would say too, Randy, that Chester Randolph, the chair, has been here at every one we've had, I mean, at least for the last month or so.
Well,
So-
and the reason I'm here today instead of John Williams is we really, this may be trivial to some people, but we wanted Mr. Williams focusing on these appeals. He's the one who is reviewing the division manager appeals that I mentioned are 99 earlier. We felt like his time would be well spent by concentrating on these appeals.
All right, let me see who we've got in line here. Let's see, we've got Counselor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Lomax,
Yes,
just
sir.
along the way here, have you been, has the Board of Tax Assessors, yourself and others been having meetings along the way with the executive administration?
The executive
The leadership of
Are you
Columbus?
meeting with me?
Oh.
Have I ever met with
The
the,
city manager and all, and talking through this situation with finance department?
I have not met with the mayor in maybe 2 years. I talked to the city attorney. Well, I'll be happy to meet anytime, Mayor.
I know, I hear you.
I talk to the city attorney quite regularly. I have not talked with Mr. Hughley in quite some time. I did attend a meeting with several representatives of the city and the school board, tax commissioner's office, and when we talked about the issue of submitting the digest and sending out the bills. I think that's the only meetings that I'm familiar with. But I do talk to Clifton Fay, in all frankness, quite often about this matter and other matters relating to the city and football.
Let me go back and ask you, I got a couple of questions. This matter about the taxpayer, the citizens, sending in the lower amount on their tax matter, or official tax, well, 2016.
Yes.
Either or. You with me?
You just about the bill itself?
Right, either or. Either you can send in what 85% of what the notice says, or you can send in last year's tax.
Correct. I'm with you.
Okay. In that process along the way, let's just say that it's deemed that it doesn't really, there's not a settlement, or there is a settlement or agreement, that it comes up that the number is more than that lower amount submitted.
Yes, sir.
And over time through this process, when and who's going to be responsible for interest and penalties, or when does interest and penalties kick in if a citizen has to send in more money?
Well, that is a answer that probably should be given by the tax commissioner's office, because the tax assessor's office does not impose nor collect taxes. But my guess would be, and this is strictly a guess, is that the property owner would be responsible for any interest that is due on unpaid taxes.
So if they send in that lower amount and they go to the Board of Equalization, or it's disputed
Right.
along the way, they're not successful, maybe it's reduced to a lower amount, but not the amount that they send in, then it is quite possible that they're going to be responsible for interest and penalties.
Yes, sir, but that is really a question that the tax commissioner should be answering and not the tax assessor's office.
Well, and I understand that, but that should be a pretty easy question to answer, I would think, whether it's the tax assessor's office or the tax commissioner. The way I read it is that they will be responsible. Is that the consensus around the table here? That they
We
will
have-
be responsible?
I have to ask the tax commissioner. Clifton, do you know?
I know part of it. If their value is reduced after all their appeals to the Board of Equalization and they are due a refund, The statute also provides for refund of some interest, so,
Well, that's a reverse scenario.
yeah, that's a reverse.
That's a reverse scenario. I'm talking about,
But they can be liable for a penalty if they're late, and interest if the value is actually increased after all appeals.
that the value is increased after all appeals, okay?
They can be liable, but it's a cap on the interest by statute.
So the answer is yes.
Yes, there is a cap.
Okay.
If it's erroneously assessed, they can appeal to this body for a refund of interest and penalty. Yes, and penalty, both.
Let's see if Council Davis wants to finish.
Well, I'll yield and then pick
Okay.
back up, Mayor, if
All right,
Counselor Allen
let's
wants
see,
to.
Counselor Allen, you had something you wanted?
Well, you said penalty and interest, and I thought we had the right to refund one or the other. but
No,
not
it's both, if it's erroneously
If it's
assessed.
erroneous, okay, if they're
Right.
just unhappy with the results and they come in and they want,
Then normally not. The tax commissioner will give you a report on whether she thinks there's been some kind of a gross neglect, but you have
and
the
if
power.
council chooses to do something, what is within our right to do?
Or you can refund the entire penalty and interest under the statute if you feel it's been erroneously assessed.
I thought we could only do one or the other.
No, it's both. They changed the
But
statute.
we've had people citizens petition us for that, and we were told we could only do.
They changed the statute a couple of years ago.
They did, there was a change in the statute.
There has
Okay,
been, the
okay.
last couple of years.
All
We
right.
did that for Dan Parker, both. Didn't we?
When was the
Okay.
law, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
When was the law passed that basically the state mandated that counties would have to do, every 3 years, do reevaluations and reassessments? When was that law
I
implemented?
don't, Counselor Davis, I don't think there is a law that states that. I think that may be a guideline given by the Department of Revenue in their regulations, but I don't think that is a state statute that requires the 3-year
Okay, well, it would be equally, whether a law or not, it's a guideline by the Department of Revenue, and we're under the laws of the state, and we go by the Department of Revenue guidelines. That's my
We do our
understanding.
best to, yes, sir.
Okay, and so, how long has that been in place, that every 3 years that you're supposed to be up to date and current with reassessments and valuations?
Quite some time, I believe.
Okay. Well, Mr. Lomax, I'm not going to get, I think Counselor Thomas said it real well. I still have concerns. I
Yes.
think I've used the word, look, you've been here, you've heard some of my concerns, some of my comments, some of my reflections of my constituency, the citizens I represented. Even this morning, I had more conversations, Counselor Thomas, about the same matter. And, and every time I talk to him, I'm, well, what would you do in this situation? What would help? Maybe we can't turn back and go back and fix all this, because what's happened has happened. Matter of fact, this guy, it has a history to it. And I kind of am glad you're here, because I think you were involved with part of this history. It goes all the way back to the Superior Court judges reprimanding the tax assessor's office, not just once, but twice. And then we proceeded forward in 2014 with the need to expedite the urgency of succession planning in the tax assessor's office, which, matter of fact, the mayor's letter to this body stated that there was such a need, that we needed to do succession planning, needed to do it right away, that there was a position created for a chief deputy tax assessor. And then as we went into the budget, I think it was stated that we need to begin, council was apprised of the need, an urgent need, to begin the reforming of the tax assessor's office and the systems thereof. And that's when we started getting into the software matters and the other things. And then I guess a resolution came where it talked about upgrading the software, asking council to approve funding to get everything up to date. And I think there was the word reevaluation also put in there as well. And then here, fast forward, here we are today. I do believe this matter, not saying that it was part of the process along the way, and eventually it was going to happen. But I think that when you look at from council's perspective, going all the way back to the approval back in 2014, we just came out of the Great Recession. And there was, year after year, I go to all these meetings that we have on the state of the state, by the University of Georgia, they come here, state of the economy, and they always tell us good news, bad news. Well, the good news is they always say, well, Columbus wasn't hit as hard as everybody else during the Great Recession. But the bad news, Columbus is not recovering as well either. The rest of the state's recovering, but our values have stayed the same. So back in that time, I would have never fathomed or never guessed that we would be at this point today, where all of a sudden these valuations are all over the place, somewhat astronomical. Not all of them, but there's a large part. So that leads to a situation where, we've talked about this being unprecedented. And my concern still is where we're at. I think the number one priority for the tax assessor's office right now is to regain the confidence of the citizenry, and the only way you can do that is try to do the best you can.
Yes,
Try
sir.
to get things right where they need to be.
I agree with that 100%.
Well, it's the only thing you can do at this point, and that's the right thing to do. I do think the citizens are, like we talked about, they're still very sensitive to this matter, and it's quite emotional and very upsetting, very burdensome, just the cost in itself. I myself have to spend money to correct some of these matters, hoping that it gets correct. I don't know, but I'm having to do it. I know others that are having to do it. Some may not. Some may have the access to the tools or the information, whatever they need to do it. But like Councilor Thomas said, the burden is being placed on the citizenry to get this right. But that's not what the regulations from the Department of Revenue or the tax assessor's office says. It says that the tax assessor has the burden, or the undue burden, to show proof, not just proof, but an excessive amount of proof that they are in the right, and that whether it's the reassessments or the valuations or whatever, that it's appropriate.
That is correct. In a court proceeding, the burden is on us
Correct.
to prove the value. You are absolutely correct. And I appreciate and applaud your comment by saying it's the right thing to do. Because Councilor Davis, you are correct. It is the right thing for us to do is to look at each appeal and get the value correct. Just like I mentioned in my very early comments this morning, if I have to go to court, one of the first things I say is, we want to get it right. We don't want to win or lose. We want to leave with a correct value. And that's what we want to do here. We want to make sure for these 4,400 appeals that we get the value right.
Well, that is my hope, but anyway, we're at where we're at, and I don't,
Yes, sir.
I don't want to go back and like I said, I think I used the term get in the weeds on all this, but I do think that in a situation like this, the right thing to do, the prudent thing to do is to slow down. And, if I could go back, one wish that could have helped in this situation, and I think one of the largest concerns, or one of the greatest concerns of this body is that the notification. The notification came through the notices that came out, but the right thing would have done was to notify the citizenry long in advance. And, this still being painful, it probably been a little easier process at this point, but we're at where we're at. Mr. City Attorney, I think the council was concerned about looking at options and what we could do, what we request. We request a letter to go out. I have to admit to you, I wouldn't have wrote the letter like it was written. It's somewhat disappointing, but it's out. It was almost as if what we requested, we also gave them the answer to at the same time. But I don't know what has come back since. Has any response other than the Superior Court judges saying that they would have to recuse, I imagine,
No, sir.
because they're taxpayers as well?
No, sir, Superior Court judge has bowed out because of advisory opinion regulations, and the Attorney General, there is a requirement that we give our opinion before the Attorney General will even consider giving a local opinion. So that's why we had to put our opinion in the letter, and we have not heard back.
Well, I wish we would have been a little more open in what we were actually looking for as far as options and what this governing authority can and can't do. And when do you expect an answer? Or have you,
No
has there
telling.
been any contact with these entities that we've sent these letters to?
We have not talked to the Attorney General's office. They frequently write back in a month or two if they're going to respond, so.
Well, I'm still under the impression that, I know you've given this council your opinion that we cannot petition a Superior Court judge, but
Not at this time, not until the State Revenue Commissioner takes action to disapprove the digest.
well, and I've heard that, I think everybody's heard in the community that one of our state representatives has done some research into this, and he says that we can petition the Board of Tax Assessors or ask the Board of Tax Assessors that they would look at this matter from our perspective and what we've been trying to communicate, and that they would freeze the 2017 tax assessments on real property and at the 2016 values in light of the unprecedented increases. And I think, Mr. Lomax, I saw a comment in the paper that you said that this would be, it would probably be counterproductive. I think that's the word you used. I don't look at it like that. Because when you're in a situation like this, it's just common sense. Something's going to happen to somebody, like the situation that Councilor Thomas just explained, and others. And I can give you many, many examples, but somebody's going to fall through the cracks. And then there's going to be a situation, it's just not going to be a good thing. So I think in an effort to try to slow this thing down and to get everything where it needs to be, keep going through the process. Keep going through the process, work it out, get all this stuff straightened out, let everybody do what they need to do for 2017. But to submit the tax digest based on the 2016 values. And I prepared a resolution to ask the Board of Tax Assessors. We can ask. And I understand that that's an option we have. I don't know what their response is going to be, but certainly I think it's a commitment that I made to the citizens. I can't speak for the rest of my colleagues, but it's a commitment that I made that I would try to find all solutions to try to resolve this matter where we're at today. And I think that this is the right way, or one way, to help out. A business person told me that, right now they're having to play defense. I said, what do you mean by that, having to play defense? He said, well, when I'm on the offense, my business can make money. I can do what I do every day, and I can keep doing business. But right now, I have to put everything on hold, and I have to play defense. I can't make money when I'm playing defense. And I'm having to play defense on this because I've got tons of appeals that I have to put in, and it just slows everything down. So it's across the board. There's so many different scenarios here. And I don't know, personally, I don't know how they're all going to get worked out in a timely manner. Somebody's going to drop through the cracks. So I'm going to make a resolution, and I don't mind reading this resolution. Every council member has it in front of them. But I do have a resolution, Mayor, if other council members want to be heard before we come back to it.
We got a motion and second. We got a motion and second. We can have discussion. My one question, I don't know if it's for Clifton or Councilor Davis or Randy, 20,000 parcels have been reduced in value. 1/3 has been reduced, 20,000. Now, they're not here, at the chambers because presumably their taxes have been reduced, right?
They're happy.
So they're happy. They're happy. So if we go back to the 2016 digest, 20,000 parcels will be increased in value and taxes.
They'll be unhappy.
And they will be unhappy. So how does that work? If we go back to the 2016 digest with the 20,000 parcels that will be increased?
Exactly that way. It would all revert back to last year's value.
I think there's several issues here that have not been discussed. Number one, and this is an issue that I don't feel comfortable discussing because I cannot speak for the tax commissioner's office, but I have some concerns about the logistical issues that would be involved in telling the tax commissioner we're going to revert back to 2016 values as opposed to going forward with 2017. I'm just not sure how that would work. I'm not sure how the tax assessor's office can convert their 2017 data on the new system, the IAS World system, back to the 2016 system, which is the OASIS system, and be able to generate a digest that we can give the tax commissioner.
But more fundamental than that is, you've proven that 20,000 parcels are no longer at the value you charged them in 2016.
That is correct.
We would not say, but they presumably would argue that perhaps they paid too much in taxes in 2016, and now you got it right. And to go back to 2016 and charge them more value and more taxes, 20,000 parcels is a lot of parcels, a lot of people.
That's right.
And I don't know how we, knowing now that their parcels are not worth that, how we tax them more.
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, Mayor, and keep in mind, we're under a tax freeze too, so, majority of these residential properties are not going to change in their tax bill regardless. Valuations and reassessments go up and down. I'm not talking about those. And I don't know about this 20,000 that we're talking about. There's so many different scenarios. I just said there's so many different scenarios out there. And somebody's going, the point is, yes, I understand what you're saying, and you can, that's what I would say if I was the tax assessor, but it's a command. I understand what I've learned is it's just a command. Just send it over to the tax commissioner. She'll do the collection. All you have to do is just tell her to collect the 2016 digest. Submit it, and she'll do the collection. Like I said, Mayor, it's the one or two people out there. And look, over in Oakland Park, there's so many, my mother-in-law relies on my wife, and she hasn't even got the tax notice yet because the mother-in-law's been traveling. My mother-in-law's been traveling. She hasn't got her tax notice yet. She has no clue. She doesn't read English. She's Korean. She speaks broken English. But you know what? All her friends are the same way. And there's Councilor Woodson, tons of Germans and different ethnicity over there. Something's going to happen. That's just one example. But I can give you many. Something's going to happen where somebody's going to fall through the cracks. That's my concern.
And Councilor Davis, I think that's what...
In where we're at today at the 11th hour.
Councilor Davis, I think that's what the city attorney was mentioning early. There is a statute in place, and Clifton, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's OCGA Section 48-5-380 that allows taxes that are erroneously collected to be refunded. If someone discovers an error after the fact, after they've paid the taxes, they have the right to request a refund. So it's not like the door is closed on them. So, yes, I agree that someone may fall through the cracks, but if that is discovered, they do have a remedy that will allow that error to be corrected.
They may have a remedy, but do you agree it's going to be at a cost?
It's going to be a what?
It will be at a cost. How do you expect my mother-in-law to defend herself?
Well, I don't think it's an issue of defending
She can't. She's
herself.
going to have to find somebody like you, an attorney, and she's going to have to pay by the hour.
No, sir, I have to disagree with that because the process is just submit the refund request to the commissioner, tax commissioner. I think they send it to the city attorney, and it ends up in front of council here.
So she can just walk into the tax assessor's office and tell them, I got an erroneous tax bill here, change it.
I think that's...
Is that easy?
I think this city attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's that easy.
Yeah, they do have to file a written request with the governing authority. So, they do have to either get a letter to the clerk of council or get assistance in getting a letter to the clerk.
All right, we've got other
Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. Thank you.
discussion. I would say about the homestead freezes, those apply to people who've been raised or lowered in assessment.
that is
So
correct.
it's the same issue. The 20,000 parcels is still a concern regardless of that. Mr. City Manager, did you have something that you
Well,
wanted to?
Madam Mayor, as reluctant as I am, and I'd rather not be involved in this discussion, but I've asked staff, I didn't know this resolution was coming forward, and I've got them calculating the budget impact. And I want to share that with council members before they vote on the resolution. We projected, as you know, a 2.4% increase in the digest. And we relied on that revenue as part of the current budget. And then I think about the fact that in the budget, we had 20 hours for bonus pay, and we went to 40. And so I just need council members to know the budget impact, having included the 2.4% and then considering what we just did with the bonus pay. They are calculating that number now. I did not know, and they did not know it, that this resolution was going to come forward, or we would have had that number calculated. So I just want you to know that.
Let's continue on with, we've got the motion on the table. We've got counselors lined up to speak to the motion. And then before they vote, if you'll just provide that so they know. Counselor Huff.
We proceeding with the motion, or we are still on?
Discussion on the motion? Do you want to let me come back to you after?
Yeah, come back to me
Okay.
after the motion.
I'm going to turn you off, then turn yourself back on. Counselor Garrett.
Just to have the forums, I've held the town halls I've held, and there were other people here who are in the audience who can speak, who could affirm this, but I would say typically 30 to 40 people came to those forums. 3 to 4 out of every forum did not get a notice at all. So Councilor Henderson's issue is not unique. This is a little more widespread than is expected. Then I would say with the more sophisticated forums we held, more people knew about the appeal process. But with the neighborhood forums, probably half the people had no idea what was going on. I'm sure there were a lot of people who weren't there because we're talking 30, 40 people at a very large neighborhood. So there's a lot of folks who don't know anything about this process. And I guess my issue is everybody's repeating the same thing over and over again about it. But we're saying, at least in court, the burden is on the tax assessor's office. But right now, the burden is on the citizens. And if they don't appeal, that's a real issue because a lot of folks don't even look at these notices. They don't think anything about it, or they have not gotten the notices. And right now, there's a lot of errors we found. I mentioned in the last meeting, and I was corrected by the tax assessor's office when I said the word glitch. But to me, it's a glitch when we've got homes that are, they say they're 11,000 square feet on a street that has nothing over 3,000 square feet, and that wasn't caught. Lakes that are assessed as commercial. Roundabouts in neighborhoods that are owned by the HOA. I mean, the list goes on and on. We've gotten emails about it, and it's been pretty crazy. And as far as the reductions, I mean, obviously we're not going to get contacted by everybody, congratulating us that they got a huge reduction in property. But the people I have talked to, the significant reductions have been homestead, and then people who have commercial who have gotten reductions. It's been like some of my clients, like trailer parks, multi-million-dollar pieces of land, and they might have gone down a couple $100. They were happy about that, but I mean, it's nothing in the scheme of things as far as what we've seen go up. But what I've seen is we've got a lot of residents who don't know what's going on. I think Councilor Davis's, if his resolution is something that's certainly something we need to consider, and that's why we want the tax assessors here, and I would like you to speak to why they're not here. I don't think that's been answered yet because we did request their presence. And we haven't had them in any of our forums. They haven't come to any of the meetings or talked with any of the counselors as far as I know. And that's something I'm concerned about because our representative, Richard Smith, said that's one of our major options to roll back. And with if we're supposed to be assessing, even if it's a directive from the tax revenue commissioner every 3 years, the assistant tax assessor, John Williams, said that he had a 250% increase that he did approve. He said there was data to justify that. to me, even if there's data to justify that, it just does not make any sense. It's not fair to our citizens, because that's the kind of thing where we're going to get basically attacked as council because you're taxing people out of their homes. Even if there's some sort of data to justify it, because something went wrong where we did not adjust the value, if it went up legitimately by 250%, and that happened all in 1 year. But then there's so many other examples where the data has not been, does not justify it, and there are errors found where the comparables don't make sense. And, you know, Councilor Davis if we can make it work with the budget, I mean, that's, his resolution, I think, is something that needs to be seriously considered, but we wanted the tax assessors here to tell us what their thoughts were on that. This is a televised meeting. This isn't us, and, you know, we appoint the board, so to tell us we need to go to their meeting on Monday, I don't think that's very appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate for our citizens. I think if we request them be here, we expect some explanation, and we have not had the Board of Tax Assessors here. We have had you, and I appreciate you coming, and we've had John Williams, and we've had Dave Milton, but we want to know what exactly is the plan. Are they going to consider our option? Because then if they're not, we need to be able to consider other options.
Well, I can answer the question that you just asked.
Sure.
Will the Board of Tax Assessors consider a resolution, or as you called it, an option? Of course, absolutely.
Okay.
And if there is a resolution passed today, I will be at Monday's meeting discussing that with them. No doubt about it, no doubt about it. Now, how they will react to that, vote upon that, address that, I can't speak. That's for the board. But yes, obviously they will consider anything that is put before them by this council. The request for their appearance was made at exactly 9 o'clock yesterday morning. I received the text or the email from Clifton Fay, and it actually originated with Councilor Thomas, I believe. And they discussed it, and I think because of the late request and it didn't really state what the specific topics were going to be, there were plans that just could not be changed, and they could not be here as a group. I think they would welcome any counselor to show up and appear at their meeting, which the next meeting is Monday, and be happy to discuss any concerns they have. I will point out that Chester Randolph, the chairman of the Board of Tax Assessors, has been at several of our council meetings, as well as Betty Middleton, John Williams, and Leilani Floyd.
And I have seen Chairman Randolph.
Yes.
I just haven't heard from him.
When called upon.
Caught him.
Yeah.
But as far as showing up at the neighborhood meetings, I don't know if the Board of Tax Assessors has been invited to any of those. I can't address that. I know there was an open invitation or a specific invitation with some Board of Equalization members, and I kind of thought that was a little bit out of the ordinary for a Board of Equalization member to go to a forum and discuss an issue that may be before them for determination. That really kind of sounded like a conflict of interest to me.
Okay.
Let's see, we've got Counselor Allen.
It wasn't to the motion. Is
Oh,
that
I'm
what we're
sorry.
doing?
Will you cue yourself back up then? Let's see, we've got, Counselor Thomas, you to the motion? Yes. Okay, Counselor Thomas.
Mr. Lomax,
Yes,
the
ma'am.
figure 20,000 has been put out as the number that have been reduced.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know of those 20,000, how many of those were under homestead exemption?
No, ma'am, I don't. I could probably find out, but I don't.
Were there some that were under the homestead exemption, however? Would you
I'm
think?
sure, I would think so, but I do not know the answer.
I would join with my colleagues, I think, Mr. Counselor Garrett and Counselor Davis on this resolution. I think that it's time for this council to take a position with the Tax Assessors Board. It blows my mind that they didn't know what the topic would be in our inviting them to this meeting today. But be that as it may, I would like for Counselor Davis, as the maker of the motion, to read into the record the resolution so that not only we as counselors around this table have the resolution, but the people watching this broadcast will also know what is in the resolution. So that is a request, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Counselor Davis, would you like to read that into the record?
Let me
See?
go ahead and speak to the motion now.
Okay, Counselor Huff to speak to the motion.
Yeah, in looking at all that's been discussed this morning, and all the scenarios that could come about, and the people who are not English-speaking and not understanding the system at all times, what happens to our citizens if they don't understand and they don't appeal in time and they lose property? What happens to them?
I cannot answer that question. You know, the process has not changed in terms of appeals. It's the same process that we've had for the last 10 years. The official tax matter notices go out. It gives a property owner the value. They have the right to appeal. There's a deadline for the appeals. Nothing has changed for property owners in the last few years.
The taxes have dramatically increased.
The
for some.
valuations have changed, but the process itself remains the same. Any property owner who has received these notices in the past received basically an identical notice this year with the identical inserts telling them to take the same type of action if they so desired.
On the ones that were devalued, are they being handled the same way?
When you say devalued,
Meaning the taxes were the same, but the property went down, the value of the property went down?
Everybody receives the same notice, yes, sir.
Okay, but I'm saying the appeal process is the same to say that
Oh, sure, sure.
I'm accustomed to paying $1,500 in taxes, but my property's been devalued $50,000.
The appeal process is the same no matter whether you're appealing increase or decrease, yes, sir.
Okay. And on the 8% rule, you're saying that, I want you to just walk through that one more time.
When the digest is submitted to the Revenue Commissioner, the Revenue Commissioner will
The
not.
State Revenue Commissioner.
Yes, ma'am. The State Revenue Commissioner. The digest will not be approved if at the time of submission, more than 8% of the total number of parcels are under appeal, or more than 8% of the total value of the digest is under appeal. And it has to be both of those, both 8% of the number of parcels and 8% of the value, not one or the other.
Okay, on the 15th?
No, sir. It's when she actually submits that. The 15th is just the cutoff, the 14th, I'm sorry.
14th cutoff, I'm saying the morning of the 15th doesn't apply.
That's right. Close of business on the 14th is when the cutoff for filing an appeal. That is not the measuring stick. The measuring stick is when we actually submit the digest to the Revenue Commissioner. So we may be over one of the 8% thresholds on August 15, but we're going to continue to diligently work those appeals so that we can get it down. And I'm just arbitrarily picking a date, maybe on September the 12th, when the digest is ready to be submitted, we very well may be below the 8% threshold. That's the measuring date.
Okay, I'm just having a problem like my counterparts up here about the fact that we could not get the board here. I know it was requested to be here, and it's kind of sad that we can come to their meeting, but they won't come to ours. And theirs is not televised, and ours is for the public to listen in and see what's being discussed and talked about. It's hard for us to take the calls and the conversations and the battering that we've been through for the last few weeks and to be told, you know, it's the Board of Tax Assessors, it's the state, you have no authority in this. But it's our constituents that are being hit with all of this. So I am very much in favor of Councilor Davis's resolution this morning. This is just, I haven't, you know, before being elected, I just have never seen anything like this. Columbus has been a city that we've been running around the state and being congratulated for our public-private partnerships and all that we do and how well we take care of our citizens. And this is like the ball was dropped somewhere, that it was more about the money and not the people.
Well, we don't think it's about the money. We realize there are concerns. As I stand here today on behalf of the Board of Tax Assessors and the Tax Assessor's Office, we know that 6.71% of the parcels in Muskogee County have expressed a concern, a significant concern regarding the value of their property. We have already addressed 619 of those parcels and reduced the value. So we're assuming that the 619 are going to be satisfied, probably not pleased, but satisfied with our reduction. But we also believe that if 6.71% are unhappy, then 93.3% must be, I don't want to say happy or pleased, but they've accepted the valuation. So if we've got a 93% acceptance rate, then maybe it's not as bad as it sounds. We realize that there are problems and there are issues, and we're going to address those. We are going to diligently, and it's like all hands on deck. We are working to address those appeals, and all 4,669 appeals are going to be looked at by the Tax Assessor's Office.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that 93% is on paper. That's a lot of confusion out there within that 93%. They haven't appealed, some don't understand how to appeal, some have not received notices. Some of the people I spoke with have just accepted the fact that this is the city government, there's nothing I can do. They don't want to appeal. I've seen several properties that have been valued down.
Yes, sir.
Taxes are the same. And they feel like it's just an uphill battle for them. So we're here fighting for the people. So I appreciate you being here, and I hope we can get Councilor Davis's resolution in place. Thank you.
Let's see, we've got Counselor Henderson.
Motion, I guess. The fact that council, I think, is considering this resolution speaks to the desperation that we feel at how limited our options are. And I think, as you pointed out, this resolution is something that's sent to the Board of Tax Assessors in the hopes that they will apply that to the information they've collected and do what they believe is the right thing to do. This is expressing, I think, the sincere concern of council. And admittedly, now listen, my phone has rang more over this issue than almost any issue in the 20 years I've been here. So to me, it signifies that this is a widespread concern. But there's a couple of things I think that this is why I consider this a last-ditch effort, because I don't know if we've talked to the school district to find out what kind of impact it's going to have on them and their budget. Certainly, they need to be notified so that they can at least plan ahead a little bit. The other thing is I don't know how many of these folks went down. I don't know how many of them were homestead. I think it's unrealistic to think that all 20,000 were residential property that are under homestead or under the tax freeze. So there is the possibility that there could be some litigation coming from somebody who just decides they're not happy because they didn't get the $50 reduction in their taxes this year. But I think, too, as Councilor Huff, I think, stated, and I won't belabor it, but I think there's a factor added to that are subtracted from that 93%. And I don't know what that factor is. And those are people who feel either disenfranchised or and I'm not being ugly, but they just don't understand the workings of government. They don't understand technology. Or maybe they haven't even opened their notice. Maybe it's life as usual, and this is the notice. It's the same every year. I'm going to throw it over here in the candy jar, and we'll worry about it later. And they're not going to really know until the bills go out, and they see those bills. And that, admittedly, may be a very small number, but this has become a big enough issue. It's almost like crime statistics. You can say that, well, it's a very small number, but not one is acceptable. And in this particular issue, it may be a small number, and I anticipate it will be relationally to the overall tax digest. But the devastation that it can unintentionally create has been highlighted through this process. So again, I hearken back to, this is not something that I would normally consider doing that would take a whole out of the budget, a whole out of the school district's budget. But I think we've gotten to a point where we, as a group, don't really have a whole lot of options. So our only option is to send this resolution, it's the first time I've had an opportunity to read it, to the tax assessor, the Board of Tax Assessors, and then the rest, and then just rely on their good judgment. Because see, we don't see these 600. We don't know who they represent. Y'all do. We don't see the 463 that there were no change recommended. Were the 463, were they business owners who are renting property who are now going to jack the rents up or have to as an operator? We just don't know. You guys have that advantage over us, and that's why we kind of rely on, once this resolution hits the table at the Board of Tax Assessors, we rely on their good judgment to know what these numbers represent. And are we getting closer to a resolution, or are we just sort of treading water? So I feel pretty confident that resolution is going to be approved, and from that point, we're just relying on the good sense and the hard work of the board. And I do have to say this about the board. I've been in contact with them, trying to talk to a couple of the members to keep an updated feel of what's going on with the process. And these folks are a lot like us. They're good folks doing the very best they can, trying to achieve a goal. And I don't think, and they all have backgrounds in real estate. Most of them are either appraisers or they've worked in the real estate field. So they understand the process of comps and of the valuation of property and what should be used and what shouldn't be used. But on such a broad scale, I can tell you, because I'm in the industry, when we look at that, some of them just don't make a lot of sense. And I trust that those are in this 619, but I also know realistically, the numbers tell us and statistical averages tell us that some of them are not. And they may be because they just haven't gotten to them, or maybe they weren't explained correctly. We all have examples we can use. I can use my own property as an example. And it highlights, we don't like the word glitch, but it highlights some systemic issues and updates that need to be made in order for that process to fit within this community. And this community, you know, the value of land, there's a number of realtors here, is determined by its non-homogeneity, which means no two parcels are exactly alike, which makes an overarching review and reassessment of all this property particularly difficult, because you can't plug in parameters that are going to fit for an acre lot zoned commercial out in East Columbus Industrial Park versus one that's a half acre in Bellwood that is zoned commercial, but it's being used as residential. So anyway, to the motion, I just would like to know if we have talked to anybody from the school district, have kind of put them on notice that this is something we're going to do, because this will impact them as well. And one other question for the city attorney. I've seen I thought I saw in one of the case studies of another government that had addressed this, a similar issue. They actually piecemealed and delayed the collections through the year. So they had a mid-year collection. I thought I saw that where they had either passed legislation or they adjusted the tax commissioner's mailing schedule to collect a portion of it in mid-year and then the remaining a little bit later to try to get caught back up. Is that, if the digest is recertified as 16, can we reserve the right to get a partial payment once all of the issues are settled?
As a practical matter, I think that's going to be difficult because you have already set December 1 as the payment date. But
I recognize that. What I'm asking is, can we amend that date if we took as Councilor Davis said, the unprecedented action to go in and request and receive a recertification in 17 of 16's digest? Seems if we can go to that length, we should be able to.
I think you could, by ordinance, set up a delayed date, but then, of course, what it's going to do to the budget, I can't speak to
No,
that.
admittedly,
Yeah.
the budget is going to be impacted
Right.
rather severely. And
Right.
and again, I harken back to saying that illustrates the desperation I think that council feels to try to protect the citizens from any undue financial hardship, is that and it's going to make next year's budget, I'm sure the mayor's thrilled about this, because our budget next year we knew it was going to be tight, but it is really going to be, it's going to be painful.
And there would be other logistical problems too, because the tax commissioner here locally, Ms. Huff, attaches penalties if taxes are not paid by December 20. There are all kind of things that would have to be
I recognize that, and
addressed.
certainly we'd have to evaluate any cost associated with changing the regular process of collecting those taxes, but does that flexibility exist within this organization that we could determine that once the issues that council has were satisfied, could we set another date for trying to catch up to the 17 digest?
You certainly could by ordinance. I'm just saying the state revenue folks and others may have tremendous
Something
problems with that.
I imagine they would, but, okay, thank you. And about the school district, I don't know if you've spoken with them.
Counselor Davis, have you spoken with the school district about the 2016 resolution?
I'm sorry.
Well,
Well, let me just say it like this. You know, I think to every argument, there's a counter argument. And I understand the plea at the last minute, and I go back to saying we're dealing with an unprecedented situation here that demands a resolution in order to find a solution. I don't think it's right to balance a budget or the future budget on the backs of the citizenry on money that's going to be collected that you know you're going to have to reimburse a lot of it in the first place, but you're still projecting a slight number. I mean, look, we don't totally rely on property tax to run this government. The economy is growing at a higher clip now than ever. This government relies more on sales tax than it does, I would make that argument, than it does in these other areas that we're talking about. So there's a good opportunity. Every year we come in. Every year we come in, and depending on what we, or even at the percentage of the budgeted tax digest, new money comes in. And I would hope that this government and a school district is budgeting conservatively so that there is room to deal with variances.
Well, I think you misunderstood my comment. I
Well,
wasn't,
the answer is
I'm
you
in
direct-
support of the resolution.
Yeah.
I'm just asking if we have put the school district on notice. This is something, I just wondered if we had let them know that this is something we're considering. Not asking permission, just making sure that they're informed. Because I'm not against the resolution. I'm actually going to support it. But
I haven't talked to them. I don't
Okay.
know if anybody else has talked to them.
I just was curious if they had been notified.
I think the responsibility lies more on this body than the school district, in my opinion, based on the charter and based on how we go about our procedures
And I agree,
process here.
I agree completely. Again, my comment was just maybe we should notify them that this is something that we're considering so they can begin to make some kind of plans.
Okay.
But we'll notify them. I'm sure that somebody will notify them.
Imagine they just have been.
And do we, council, the budget chair said that, I guess that they understand it's going to be a large budget impact and still support this. Do we know the number? Do you want to tell us the number, and then we need to read it into the into the record and get it voted on?
Yes, I'm going to have staff to come around and share with you.
Well, Madam Mayor, I don't think that's appropriate this time because it's all projections. You don't know. These are all projections.
We're going to have to amend the budget.
Well, we can do that at mid-year. We can amend the budget based on what we're talking about at mid-year. We do it all the time. We can do it here in this case.
So you don't want to know the number?
You don't want to know?
I really I think it's irrelevant.
It could result in massive layoffs. I'm just saying, if it's $4 million or $5 million, I'm
Madam
talking
Mayor,
about.
you just keep the same
we're
budget
already-
we use this year, and that's not going to change anything.
Well, we've just paid $2 million out in bonuses that we hadn't budgeted, but $1 million for. So we're there's a possibility we may have to take out a tax anticipation note just to pay the bonuses that we increased, as we talked about in public.
that
And now you're
number you
talking
just
about
inflated, it's only
reducing
$1
it.
million that you have to find. You've already
Another $1 million,
you've
right.
budgeted $1 million.
Right, and so we have to find another $1 million,
Just make
which we
that-
don't have.
Let's just make that straight.
Okay. The what now?
I just think it's important to make note of the fact that the tax anticipation notices are largely driven by the delay in the collection of the tax.
But we could have made it except for the other $1 million. I mean,
We-
we thought we could make it except for the other $1 million. That's what kind of threw us. It's all tight, and $1 million
Yeah.
is a lot.
But again, I think just to be clear, I don't think that that $750,000 coming out of the general fund budget is what is going to lead to the TANs. It was a perfect storm of several things that occurred at one time, not the least of which was the delay in the
Yeah.
collections and not having access to any kind of tax revenue in October, which would have staved all of that stuff.
And further delay, I mean, this is important, and obviously council wants to support this, and that's fine, but I think that the community needs to know the ramifications. For instance, one thing you've heard Clifton say is that if they go back to the 2016, they probably are, and you've just suggested, going to have to move the collection date from December 1. So let's just say that's January 15th. You talk about a tax anticipation note. Now it's a huge tax anticipation
Well, actually,
note.
what would happen
Or
if they
March
certified, correct me if I'm wrong, but if they certified the 16 digest, the collections would still take place in December, but there would be that shortage or that difference between what the 17 digest was. That portion would be what we would try to collect if we could with a subsequent mailing. So we'd still end up with two mailings. It's just that it wouldn't be in October and then December. And the question was whether we could make that up if we ended up deciding that a lot of the 17 numbers are closer to accurate,
Okay.
then we could bill for that. So but the 16 should still be able to be collected in December.
Okay. All right, I think, give us a number. I mean,
Well, I'm going to have staff to come around, Mayor, and
Mayor, we just said we don't want to hear that.
I want to hear it. No, I represent the citizens too, and I'd like to hear the number. So let's just hear the number. I don't know why we want to vote on something without information.
I don't
That's
think there's anything wrong with that.
weird.
I think it's good.
We
to
just
know
don't want the
what we're doing.
citizens to know. We just want to hide this from them. Angelica, tell us the number, and then we can make an educated decision. People can disregard information if they want to. You have that right. Go ahead. What's the number?
The budgetary impact for the general fund is 1.3 million. Across all funds is 2.6 million.
Okay. 1.3 million and 2.6 million.
And that's a projection, right?
That's taking it back to the 2016 levels.
Barring that you don't collect any new revenue.
Right. We projected a 2.4% increase in the budget on the tax digest, and that's taking it back down to the 2016 levels.
Where are we on tax, sales tax? Is that going up? I mean, we've had such trouble with that. It's been so stagnant.
Well, excuse me, from a budgetary standpoint, we actually budgeted less in sales taxes for FY18 because of the downward trend in sales taxes. So sales taxes make up about 26% of our budget. Property taxes make up about 31% of our operating budget.
Okay, I'm just saying, is it trending up or down? I mean, what was last quarter? Was it up or down? I mean,
I have to pull
Okay,
the
that's
last
fine.
quarter numbers.
all right. Well, thank you for the information. I like information, so I don't understand the difference.
Madam Mayor, the thing to remember, it's not like there's stagnant growth in this community. There's still new growth, and there's new revenue coming in. There's still new revenue coming in. I think the citizens need to understand that, need to understand how this process works. Don't forget, last year, there was additional revenue that came in that got the fund balance up even higher than what it is on a very slim budget. You know, to me, it's called management. It's the term, that's why they call it management. Manage the budget.
We've been managing, but I just want to point out that this budget that we just passed was, I think, 4% less than in 2011. So our budgets have vacillated, but they've been decreasing.
I can tell you how the citizens look at it. It looks like we're trying to squeeze every dime out of them. That's how they look at it,
Well,
in order to spend it somewhere.
Well, all I can tell you is the budgets have gone down. So, there we go.
Well,
All right, do
read
you
the
want to read it
resolution.
in? Yeah, read it into the record.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. A resolution urging the Muskogee County Board of Tax Assessors to freeze the 2017 tax assessments for real property at their 2016 values in light of the unprecedented increases provided to many of the citizens of this county as a result of the countywide reevaluation performed by a third-party vendor. Whereas the Board of Tax Assessors of Muskogee County is the body responsible for establishing tax values in real property in Columbus, Muskogee County, Georgia, and whereas the Board of Tax Assessors undertook a countywide reevaluation of all real property in Muskogee County, Georgia through the use of a third-party vendor for tax year 2017. Whereas said reevaluation resulted in unprecedented increases in the taxable value of real property in Muskogee County, Georgia, with some properties increasing in value over 1,000%. And whereas such increases are a burden on the citizens of Muskogee County, Georgia, are, in many cases, far in excess of which is appropriate. Whereas, although the appeals process is provided for the citizens to challenge these exponential tax increases, it is neither fair nor just to place such a burden on the citizens of Columbus, Georgia, as a means to rectify this situation. Whereas the City of Columbus is capable of managing any decrease in revenue resulting from collecting taxes on real property commensurate with those collected in the tax year 2016. Whereas the tax commissioner has indicated that the reevaluation has placed an undue burden on her office. And whereas it is fair, equitable, and just for the tax assessments for the tax year 2017 to be frozen at their 2016 levels. Now, therefore, the Council of Columbus, Georgia hereby resolves that it recommends that the Board of Tax Assessors freeze the taxes on real property at their 2016 levels so that the Board of Tax Assessors will have sufficient time to re-examine the valuations established by a third-party vendor they hire to reevaluate every parcel of real property in Columbus, Georgia, and make appropriate adjustments thereto prior to tax notices being sent out for the year 2018.
Okay. All right, we've got a motion and a second. No further discussion as to the motion. Are you to the motion or something? Okay, Councilor Woodson to the motion.
I don't know if this goes to Clifton or who. Now, this is a request that we're sending to the tax assessors. They can come back and decline this and process continues as it is, correct? But if they approve it, then we would go with this process.
Right. If they
correct?
decide
Okay,
somehow
wanna
to
make sure.
redo the entire valuation, then that would be set, and then that is what collections would be based on.
Okay, and this is the same thing that we would do for any other process that, we're having questions and refers to that comes back for us. So we're just asking them to do this. This isn't going to happen.
Right. It's certainly not binding on the Board of Assessors.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I don't want the public with all the conversation going to get confused and think, okay, this is going to happen. This is not for sure. This is something we're going to try to do. We just have to wait and see. Okay.
But
Thank you.
speaking on behalf of the tax assessor's office, the resolution will come to us if the tax assessors, Board of Tax Assessors were to approve and go back to the 2016 digest. We've still got appeals coming in. I'm assuming we would still process the
Correct.
appeals and go forward as though nothing has happened. It's just the digest that we're going to deliver to Ms. Huff will be the 2016 digest.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Is there any further, Councilor Davis, did you want to speak to something?
Well, you're exactly right. I think like we said, this is slowing it down, giving everybody an opportunity to work through this and to get it right. Let's just get it right and give everybody the opportunity to try to get it where it needs to be so it won't be such a burden in this situation. And yes, it will continue the process, and hopefully it'll get them all resolved and straightened out, and we'll be back on a level playing field.
I guess my concern, although I don't really have a dog in this fight in terms of a vote, is that the resolution is accomplishing nothing more than what the filing of the appeal accomplishes, because if a party files the appeal, their tax bill reverts back to the 2016 amount anyway. Am I correct?
I think we talked about that earlier in the term you used in the paper. This is given an opportunity that we can address every situation, all of them, and get it right.
I guess I'm confused as to how we address a situation that we don't know about. If an appeal is not filed, or if it's not an error that we subsequently discover, how will we know that a correction needs to be made unless you conduct another revaluation, which is just opening up another Pandora's box? I'm
think
confused.
The solution here is to slow it down and get it all resolved. I can't help it if somebody is not willing to work with the tax assessor's office and they don't get it done. But this is giving everybody an opportunity to get it all taken care of.
Okay.
Whether going through the appeal process, whether dealing with exactly what you just said, it gives them a time frame, a longer time frame to get it done. And then once the process is completed, it'll fall right back in place.
Understand.
All right, I think that's it for to the motion. Pops, were you to the motion that's been called, or something?
You know, in all this discussion, what the citizens need to know is that we're trying to find a solution to this situation. And what, Glenn, what you just got finished saying is slowing things up a bit. And I know it might be confusing to a lot of the people, but the one thing that the people want to see is that we're really trying to do something.
Mm-hmm.
We have to come up with something. This is something, as Skip has said, is unprecedented. And it's affecting all the citizens of Columbus. And we have to come up with a solution. It's putting an undue financial burden on too many people.
Okay. All right, that concludes discussion to the motion. All those in favor of the resolution, please state aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? All right, thank you. And we continue on with discussion for, yes.
Can I have a copy of the resolution?
Yes. All right. And we'll continue on with discussion related to this matter, going to Counselor Allen.
I wanted to clarify, ask Mr. Lomax if he could help clarify some questions. Social media sometimes works too fast. But going back to the Board of Equalization and, the Board of Tax Assessors, the meetings are open, public may attend.
Yes.
If they're not on the agenda, it doesn't matter, they can sit and listen.
They can
And then if
sit.
they want to be heard, there's a motion in order that you would add them to the agenda or something like that.
Yes, if you want to address the board, you need to call and request to be on the agenda. But you're welcome to come sit and observe at any time.
Okay. Let's see. Sorry about this.
Hey, it happens. I've done it.
Okay, once the appeal is filed, how much time do the citizens have to prepare their case?
Well, once the appeal is filed, the tax assessor's office is going to conduct a review of that property, okay? And they're going to make a determination as to whether there should be no change or a decrease in the value. And a notice is sent to the taxpayer at that time, and they have 30 days to respond. So they have at least 30 days, and they will receive a notice from, if they do not agree, and it goes to the Board of Equalization, they will receive a notice. So a minimum of 30 days, more likely 45 to 60 days.
Okay, and if I understood what you said earlier, once the digest is submitted to the tax commissioner and she runs her numbers and then she submits it to the Department of Revenue.
Yes.
Part of the numbers that she submits will be the number of appeals, whether it meets the 8% formula.
Whatever it is.
So part of her presentation to the Department of Revenue is that number.
That is correct.
Whatever that number is, and she submits it to the Revenue Department, your office or the Board of Tax Assessors continues to work and process the number of appeals.
Absolutely.
Okay. So that may take you through December, it may run into January.
We don't know
If you-
how long
if you-
it will take. We're optimistic that we'll complete our review by the end of the year, but yes.
Okay, I mean, that's your goal, but
Sure.
should the number run up to 6,000 or whatever it is, the board's operations will continue to work the appeals until they're exhausted.
Our operations will continue to work until we have reviewed
Whatever
everything.
timeline that is,
Absolutely,
okay.
yes, sir.
So, and if there's someone who feels like they have overpaid, then they can come in and file an appeal, as you said earlier,
Well, now, we're not.
for a refund. I mean,
Yeah, so
that refund process is there by
They-
state law. and-
They don't
and
file
all
that with
stuff.
us, though. We're not the tax commissioner. That's with the tax commissioner's office.
Okay, all right, so it goes to tax commissioner. Okay, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things
Yes.
there, but I appreciate you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate you being here.
Okay, and we have Counselor Woodson.
I just want to make sure and clarify, even though we have passed this resolution as an appeal process, the process that Gary's talking about and you're talking about, that's going to continue, correct? And
The process that Councilor Allen just reviewed is going to continue. The passing of the resolution has no effect on that. The Board of Tax Assessors' response to the resolution will have no effect on the process. We are going to push forward, we're required to push forward, and nothing is going to change.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure nothing
ma'am.
was going to be stopped. Thank you.
Okay. All
Thank
right,
you.
I think that Randy concludes it, and thank you for your time this morning.
I would like to make a couple of final comments. Number, I'm glad Mr. Hughley just walked back in. On behalf of the Tax Assessor's Office, we want to thank the City Manager's Office for providing us with some additional support to allow us to start more timely processing the mail and the appeals. So we appreciate that. It has been a tremendous help. Thank you very much. We are processing appeals. If I'm not mistaken, and I stand to be corrected on this, Tyler Technologies has provided an additional support person to help us review these appeals. We are reviewing appeals as fast as humanly possible. They are presented to the Board of Tax Assessors every Monday for their approval and action, and we are sending out letters. So the cup will stop being full or filled on Monday, and we're going to continue to work to address those so that we can resolve as many of these as possible. Our goal is to get it right, and just like Councilor Davis said, that's our goal. We want to get the value of property correct. If someone has a concern, it's really a little too late in the process to be calling and discussing. File your appeal. That means somebody is going to pull that file, look at that piece of property, and see if there's some type of adjustment that needs to be made. Just file the appeal. It's one sheet of paper. It's not difficult to fill out. And call us on the carpet and make us take a look at it. Thank
And
you.
Randy, we're all, I think, probably getting text messages from the media, and we appreciate them being here. They want to make sure they get it right, and so we appreciate that. And just to reiterate, because I think maybe some came in after you might have said this the first time.
Okay.
But it alludes to what you just said a moment ago, and that is that if the number of parcels appealed are 8% or over, and the value of parcels appealed are 8% or over,
For the total digest.
then the digest can be rejected. But that number of appeals is as of the date, not August 14th, but as of the date the tax commissioner sends the digest to
the Revenue
Atlanta.
Commission. Mayor,
Okay.
that is exactly correct.
Okay.
No one has asked, and I'm afraid I didn't state this, but as of right now, with the 4,669 appeals that have been submitted, that represents 1.54% of the total digest. So even though the number of appeals represents a significant percentage, the total value of property under appeal is only 1.54%.
Okay. All right, we've got a couple more questions, probably, like I said, just getting text messages about clarifications. Counselor
Yeah, and-
Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just want to follow up on your
Yeah.
question. I just want to make sure I understand it, because as of the date that the tax commissioner has to send in the digest, those have to be outstanding appeals.
That's right.
So, for example, these...
Unresolved appeals.
Right. The 4,669 that have been filed, you can take out that 1,200, well, actually, the 619 that have agreed to that reduction of value. Is that
Well,
correct?
now, they haven't agreed yet. They've
Okay.
been notified that the value is being reduced. They have 30 days in which to accept or reject.
But my point is, I guess, is that every day you guys are
Yes, sir.
trying to finalize these appeals and doing a pretty good job of it, that reduces the number of outstanding, so it takes you a little farther away from the target.
As right now, the number of appeals is continuing to increase.
Right.
The number of appeals resolved is continuing to
Okay.
increase. On Monday afternoon at 5 o'clock, we draw the line, except for the appeals that may be in the mail. So there will be no new appeals coming in, but we're going to continue to address the appeals
Okay.
and work them down.
All right. I'm trying to get it
You're right.
clarified. I appreciate it.
You're right.
Okay, and we have Counselor Davis.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that. I think the citizens know now. At first, I think everybody was under the assumption that the 8% was a flat 8%. If you hit that, the red flag goes up, but that's not true. It's like you said, if the tax assessor's office is resolving these matters, which they're getting them through, and you guys are going through them,
That's right.
that works, well, you subtract that from the 8%.
That is correct.
So I don't know if that 8% number has ever been obtained in the state of Georgia, but I look at it as somewhat of a control mechanism, that it really pushes people to do their jobs and to expedite matters in a situation like this. So just keep that in mind. It's not that 8% in reaching that number. If you're expediting these things and you're getting them resolved, you know, what are the odds of hitting 8% at this point? So, you know, people need to understand that. And I think in the beginning, everybody thought, well, if we get all these appeals in and throw the red flag and then it reverts. That's not necessarily true.
Yeah, that's correct.
Mr. Lomax, thanks for being with us. You've been really helpful and very professional in talking with us, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, again, thank you. That concludes the questions at this time. And so we appreciate you being here this morning.
Thank you.
Oh, hold on a second. We've got, yes, sir.
Just so that it's clear in advance, would you all like to have an update at every, business meetings going forward until this
Sure.
matter is resolved?
Yeah.
So that you know in advance that on those days we have business meetings, we would like for someone to be here to give an update.
We'll make sure.
Thank you. All right, moving on, we appreciate everyone's patience, but as you can see, this is very important, and we want to call forward our forensic auditor, Elizabeth Barfield, who's been conducting a transition audit for the Civic Center. And Elizabeth, we appreciate you being here. And Mr. City Manager, did you have something you wanted to add? I just, your light came on. I didn't know if that was
No,
by
I didn't,
accident.
no.
Okay. All right, Elizabeth, thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning. Back in December of 2016, Deputy City Manager Lisa Goodwin requested that we do a transition audit on the Columbus Civic Center. A transition audit is generally done whenever there is a change in leadership. And in February of 2017, John Dorman replaced Ross Horner as the director of the Columbus Civic Center. The Civic Center was built in 1995 and finished up in 1996. The seating capacity, depending on the event setup or where the stage is placed, is anywhere from 8,000 to 10,000 patrons. In the past year, the Civic Center hosted just over 100 events. And you may ask yourself, what are those 100 events? Well, we had 28 to 32 hockey home games. We had 6 football home games. And then the other events that make up that 100 vary from WWE to Disney on Ice, concerts, and it also includes any events that may be taking place out in the parking lot, like the fair. When we were going through the audit, we reviewed 3 major areas: budgetary and financial performance, box office operations, security, and maintenance. In the budgetary and financial area, we looked at fiscal years 2014 through 2017. And I'm very happy to say that 2014 through 2016, the Civic Center routinely came in under budget. In 2017, there was a management decision to go over budget, and that was covered in revenue. So that was a very good situation there. In 2011, we started getting general fund subsidies, anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 a year. Now, it wasn't every year, but it was sporadic throughout that time period. For 2016 and 2017, the Civic Center did not receive any of those subsidies, and they continued to perform very well financially. So we're definitely moving in the right direction. Whenever you mention Columbus Civic Center, you automatically think about the Cottonmouths and the loss of the hockey team. The intangibles of that is probably more of a loss than the monetary value. We had consistent attendance with the hockey team, anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 people consistently coming to the hockey games. That is a really big deal. It kind of sealed the Civic Center's fate as being a safe, family-friendly venue. It was a place that you went to without even giving it a second thought. Saturday afternoon, you're sitting at home, you think, hey, let's go down to the hockey game. You don't think much about it. You're not worried about being robbed or mugged when you go down there. You know the setup, and that is valuable. When people come down to the Civic Center, they're exposed to the advertising, the billboards. They see what is coming up, makes them want to come back and come to the Civic Center again. So we're going to be losing that. That partnership is quite a loss for Columbus, and we hate to see it go. But in the future, we have got a potential buyer now in New York. You've all heard about that, and their plans sound very promising. They have got some neat strategies as far as some giveaways and things that are going to increase attendance, and the Civic Center is looking very forward to that partnership as well. One of the main things that John Dorman specified us wanting us to look at during the audit was box office procedures. Now, when I say it was a main concern of his, I don't want that to be taken as a negative. It was not a negative at all. They're not having any problems. They simply had a change in personnel. One of the folks in the box office operations was promoted to an events job within the Civic Center, and we've hired someone new to come in. He just wanted to make sure that the waters were still, processes were still being followed, and nothing was falling through the cracks. So we looked at opening and closing procedures, cash handling procedures, and balancing checkpoints throughout the financial process. I had an opportunity to work with the box office attendants, watch them get money from the vault when their day started. There was dual cash handling processes in place. Everyone was fully aware of the processes and the procedures that were in place. If I asked them questions, they were able to give me answers that led me to believe they understood why those processes were important and that they be followed. The customer service was acknowledged. I was there in an opportunity to watch them selling tickets, and unfortunately, I was there when an event was canceled. We had quite a few patrons come in to get refunds, and it was amazing to see the box office management was out with the patrons trying to monitor what was going on, talking to the patrons, guiding them to different windows, and making sure that that process was handled very efficiently and quickly. So it kind of turned what could have been a very negative encounter into a very positive one. We also looked at maintenance and security. This particular weekend that we were there, it was the annual Denim and Diamonds charitable event. Things were a little bit different than the normal event setup that they have on a regular basis, because they have the charitable dinner before the presentation or before the performance. So they were setting up dinner tables, getting food ready and processed, table settings, doing a lot of things that they don't normally do, and they were doing it as if it was something very regular for them. They didn't skip a beat. Everybody knew what they were tasked with and was getting things done. We made a visual review of their fixed assets, everything checked out there. We also had interviews and observed the security personnel. We talked to them about what their tasks were, how the areas that they were responsible for maintaining and what their procedures were, how they checked handbands or tickets. Everyone was very knowledgeable in that respect. There was one finding, though, that we did encounter with security, and that was a door on this exterior door on the southwest entrance of the Civic Center was propped open for people to come and go in and out. Now, it appeared that that was like a smoking area. So you can imagine there was a lot of traffic in and out of that door. Security was there at the door, attending the door, but the door was open. So we recommended to Civic Center management that that be closed, the door be closed, and that security guard take a little more active role in checking the folks as they entered and exited. They were completely in agreement with that and said that from this point forward, they will make sure that that happens. Overall, the audit was a very, very positive one. The Civic Center is well managed. Everyone, any questions that we asked, we were given answers immediately, promptly, and the answers were even backed up with some documentation or details to support those answers. The staff is very, very well trained. The customer service was exceptional. I think it's a model for many different areas in the city to kind of follow in their pattern. Based on the fact that they're not receiving their general fund subsidies anymore, the Civic Center is well positioned for success in the future, and we see that things are definitely moving in the right direction.
Okay. Any questions from any council members? I don't see any lights light up. Okay, was an excellent report.
Great.
I just would like to make a comment. In the future, let's try to restrain from saying anything like robbing, mugging,
I
feeling
apologize.
uncomfortable, because it is a safe place.
It is a very safe
And-
place, and that was what my intention was,
Yes.
is to talk about the fact that the Civic Center is a very safe venue.
Well, thank you.
There's a lot of children, and a lot of it's a very nice environment to be in.
And sometimes when we say words, everyone doesn't hear the whole sentence.
Right.
And I didn't want anybody to feel that's how
I
common
understand.
is
I understand.
unsafe, because it's very
Yes.
safe. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate the report. Okay. Next, can we have a motion to approve the minutes for July the 11th, July the 25th? That was a motion from Counselor Allen and a second from Counselor Thomas. One moment. Can y'all help me set this? I don't know how to do it. For the vote? Okay. All in favor? All opposed? Okay, has passed. I'm trying to find her. No.
City attorney.
City
now.
attorney? It's agenda? Okay, let me find it. Oh, here she comes. I need a class on this
we
thing.
got it on.
Thank you. I'm sorry,
welcome.
somebody had a question back there, and I got
That's
way late.
okay.
All right, we're
Clifton's
back
light.
to it, and we've got
Clifton.
Clifton's. Did we get the minutes approved? Okay, Clifton, you
All
got it.
right, we have a very short agenda, one item that we'd like to bring on second reading, but we have a substitute around the table. The substitute has been agreed to by Councilor Davis, the original sponsor, and this would say that folks who are grant recipients receiving general operating funds from the city and whose salary is paid from those funds cannot qualify to run for public office unless first resigning. This ordinance also will not apply to seats on the Muskogee County School Board. But with those amendments, we can take a motion to substitute at this time.
We've got a motion to substitute. Is there a second? Okay, there's a second. I know we've got questions. We've been hearing a lot of questions, and I'm sure Councilor Woodson, Councilor, and Mayor Pro Tem want to speak to it. But Clifton, if you could please clarify, because people are interested in this. If you are involved in a nonprofit organization and the city is partnering with you in some sort of grant, but your salary is not coming from any city funds, like maybe it's a park project and the
Right.
city is partnering with this group to build park benches, and there's $300 worth of park benches being built. but none of that's going to salary. Would you be prohibited from running for public office?
No, you would not.
Okay, all right.
This is tied to the salary. If the salary is paid from funds and you're working for a grant recipient, only those conditions would make you have to resign.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem?
And this does not apply to already elected officials, right?
No, I mean, anybody currently in office is
So what's,
grandfathered in. This would apply prospectively in the future.
I just want to know what was the rationale behind this ordinance?
Let the sponsors speak to it.
Counselor Davis?
Well, I don't mind answering that. I think the ordinance speaks for itself. I think what we realize is there's somewhat a loophole in how things are being done now. And what this does is it creates a fairness and an equitable it puts anybody in this government on the same line as all the other employees. And right now, there's a loophole that allows others that are still collecting the salary under the same scenario that an employee would be on, allows them the opportunity to run. They should be under the same rules and guidelines as the city employees and should have to follow the same requirements as the city employees when it comes to running for an elected office or an elected office.
So what happens if you get elected and you get ready to run again, but now you're working for a nonprofit?
Nothing.
As long as you don't get paid by that grant.
If money comes out of the general fund from this city and is paying somebody's salary, it is just as if they're employed by this city. And right now, the way it is set up, that there's a loophole for certain individuals, and all this does is just close that gap where everybody's on the same playing field. It's a level playing field for everybody, and if you're going to have it for one person, you should have it for all people involved if they're running for elected office.
But to Councilor Pugh's question, it would apply to people other than school board if they run again for office in the future. It would apply to them other than school board.
So if they're city councilors, like let's say we've got the 2018 elections coming up in May and somebody's elected to a position and then they go to work for, I don't know, some nonprofit here and there's a, and their salary's paid for, I guess that's what you're talking about, in part by a grant, then they either have to quit that job or not run for reelection?
Or rewrite the grant.
Or rewrite the grant?
It would be the same guidelines as a city employee, because essentially, I mean, it's the same thing.
Is it common, just because it's interesting how many calls, a couple calls we've got on this, which I didn't think anybody really even thought about, but is it common to not allow employees to run for office? Is that common or uncommon?
In most places where they got city counties, a city employee can run for a county office, and a county
Right.
office can run for a city office.
Right, and in our charter, employees can run for offices in another county, just not Muskogee.
Okay.
So it's,
All right, yeah,
it's not the same.
so it's, yeah, okay. All right, I think that's all with discussion. Let me cue it for vote. Please record your votes electronically. And it passes.
That's all we have, Mayor.
All right, great, thank you. We'll go in now to public agenda. Oh, excuse me?
Was that just a motion to substitute?
Oh, thank you, Tiny. Thank you very much. That was the motion to substitute, correct? And so now we need a motion to
Final
adopt
ordinance.
the substituted ordinance.
Second.
And there's a second. So now I will cue it again. Can you, well, I'm going to go ahead and cue it, but the wrong item is up, but I'm sure Tiny can figure that out. Let's see.
Okay,
I think I need a couple more. Got it. Okay.
that has passed.
And it did pass. Thank you, Tiny. All right, with that, we will head on to the public agenda. And first up, let's see here, we have Mr. Paul Olson, who's here. Good morning, Mr. Olson.
Good morning, Mayor,
We'll go ahead
City
and
Council.
cue you up.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Excuse me for a second. I'd like to give this to you, Skip Henderson. This is my property taxes for the excess acreage. It's the last 8 years, and this is Paul Price, who's a personal friend of mine. I'll be discussing that. But if you would, Skip, hand that around to each one of the counselors and make a copy so everyone can see that. And the reason why I'm saying that is because,
Don't forget to say your name. And
oh, I'm sorry. My name is Paul Olson. I live at 13830 Upatoy Lane, Upatoy, Georgia. Actions speak louder than words, and what you guys did today was honorable. I appreciate that, Councilor Davis and everyone else up here, by passing that resolution to go back to 2016. When we're talking about 20,000 being downgraded, I'm one of those 20,000 decreased. On my homestead exemption, it went up $93,000 in fair market value, went down $3 as far as what it costs. So $3 times, 20,000, because I met a lady out there as I was going to the bathroom, and she had the same situation, and hers was $5. So it's $3 to $5. So it's insignificant. And I would say 95%, if I was a betting man in Las Vegas, I would say 95% of them are homestead exemptions. So what you got to do is look at the offset of the 1.3 million. And who's getting beat up? It's people like me because of that excess acreage, the 3.5 acres. And it went up, $500 went up 360%, okay? Last time I was in front of you guys, I wanted you guys to basically have 3 town hall meetings and really push this agenda as far as, most people are intimidated by these appeal forms, which you guys have espoused here today. And I would have liked for you guys to have done that because honestly, you guys could have reached probably the pinnacle of at least 10,000. Didn't happen. Walker Garrett was out there, and I appreciate his effort. City councilors, according to the city charter, is ultimately responsible for the assessments and collecting the property taxes. And like Richard Smith, the state representative, said before, basically the tax assessors board works for you, and you guys appoint them. So basically, they take, direction from you. And what I gave you, Skip, was basically.
Uh-oh. Hold on a minute, Paul. I'm gonna
Yes, ma'am.
stop. Richard, you want to check it out?
You think the Lord was involved?
Thank you. I know. All right, go on.
The homestead exemption for my home, which is the 2 acres, but the 3.5, if you noticed, it says underneath there homestead, and it said no. That's for 2017, 16, 17, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, down to 10, down for 25 years. For 25 years. They saw this. They didn't need Tyler Technologies. They didn't have to pay $4.5 million. Didn't have to pay $856,000, then give them a pay raise of $60,000 in 2016. And I always thought that basically it was based on performance whenever you create a contract. But in the legalese world, in OCGA 45-11-4, it speaks of malfeasance and misfeasance and nonfeasance. And misfeasance is dereliction of duty. And nonfeasance is basically not doing what you're supposed to be doing, and you're not abiding by the law. And what Councilor Davis said is, hey, look, the guidelines of the Georgia is every 3 years. They've said that time and time again. John Williams said, hey, once this thing is set in place, we're going to do this every 3 years. So it came from his mouth. But coming from Randy Lomax, he said, well, I just don't know where that happened. Well, he's an attorney, but I would think at least it's been in place for at least 20 years. And the thing is that if that's been in place, then basically the tax assessors board for those 1,564 property owners that have excess of 2 acres, basically, for me, 25 years, maybe some of them probably go back all the way to 34 years when this thing was put in place. Then I asked, the city attorney, Clifton Fay, you've been with us for about 20 years. How long have you known that this law was in place? Can I ask? Oh, you're not going to have
We'll do that
interaction?
question and answer, but I'm going to write them down. and
But
then we can
I'm saying to you, hey, he's your legalese. He represents you. He's supposed to keep you from getting in trouble. So I'm thinking like, well, if he knows that and he's hiding that from you, then that's not misfeasance, that's malfeasance when you hide something. And that is considered a misdemeanor, okay? And a misdemeanor in Article 2, in the city charter, Appendix 2, I should say, basically, if you're in violation of a misdemeanor, then basically, you know,
Paul, you can't accuse people of
well, I
crimes, but
understand.
go on.
Yeah, hey, please don't interrupt me, please.
Yeah.
So the thing is that if you take a look at Paul Price's, he had a fair market value of $10,000 and went up $302,000, 3,000%. Now, when you have that much of a flawed difference of mine 360%, my son-in-law's 1,100% in a floodplain, his is 3,000%, I mean, that is a flawed system, I'm saying to you. And if you want to save some money, now, you're saying we're going to save $1.3 million, but this contract's $915,000. I'd say goodbye, see you later, Tyler Technologies, because we didn't need them way back when. This thing, that information was available to you guys since 1983. You failed to do your jobs, Assessors Board and the attorney who represents them, and the city attorney who failed to inform people that this referendum was in place since 1983. So I shake my head and I'm going like, what the heck over, okay? It's a non-binding agreement, that contract you have, so you can break that. Now, I also ask, since Betty Middleton's been here forever and she's the chief appraiser, she's been in charge of that, I asked for you guys to basically get rid of her because you guys just gave her a pay raise, but she's known about this forever. I mean, you see it, you can print it off, give it to yourselves, whatever the case may be. But then on my last subject I want to talk about is the OLOST. And the reason why I say that other local office of sales tax you guys passed many years ago, back in 2008, 70% for public safety, 30% for infrastructure, that was to basically give people pay raises in the public safety sector. Instead, it's been used as a slush fund. And if you look at the reserve fund, over 40 days of the 60 days is coming out of the OLOST. So when you guys are saying, well, you're taking care of the reserve fund, yeah, from the other local office of sales tax. And so to me, that's not really what the spirit of the law was for the intent of that money being there. And the morale in public safety is probably at the lowest ebb I've ever seen in my life. And speaking of that, when you see that crime is down, no. I've talked to police officers who've told me, well, Mr. Olson, I'll tell you how it goes. Like, I was at a baseball game at Columbus High. My window was broken into, cell phone was stolen, but there was 20 vehicles. The police officer did only one incident report. However, there was 20 infractions. That's considered only one incident report. So when that happens like that, and it happens in a blanket form all the time, then no, crime is not down. If you tell people, hey, crime is down in Columbus, they'll laugh at you. And the only way we're going to shore it up for public safety is to hire more police officers, start spending the money the way it's supposed to be. You know, when you did a 343-09 and you took $15 million and sent it towards an auditorium, which was not a necessity, it was an amenity. $2 million from the 1999 SPLOST was supposed to be for Olympic-sized pools, but no, we had to have this. We had 3, we were supposed to have 4, didn't happen that way, and I argued time and time again to you guys that it would be a liability. It would be a white elephant. Did you guys listen? No, you didn't. And that many of the problems that you're having right now with physical is because you didn't listen. Because we don't need that adjacent parking deck over here that cost $9 million. That came out of the OLOST. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I just wish you guys would just listen once for one time about some of the things that I bring to your attention. And lastly, out of the millage rate, and in there's Urban District 1, 2, and 4, and it says specifically, stormwater, parentheses, sewer. So when I left, you know, you guys never have any dialogue. You always have your little innuendos that you want to put in after I leave, instead of actually having some sort of dialogue. And in Urban District 1 is 1.24 mils. In Urban District 2, which is the Upatoy Midland, is 0.20. And in Urban District 4, which is in the Oakland Park area, they don't pay nothing, okay? I am on a septic tank along with those other 1,564 property owners. And I, for the life of me, I have no drainage. I have no stormwater runoff out there. I have 2 football fields that I take care of. I take care of the city's property on the other side. My property is kept meticulous. If you ever go out there, you'll find out for yourselves, okay? So maybe I should send you guys a bill for all the weed eating and mowing I've done over the years for you guys, but I'm just telling you right now, it's class action lawsuit, basically, along with the Metro system, Metro bus system, along with, basically, for 25 years, you failed to collect what was, and I would not have had a problem if you guys would have went up 3% each year on that excess acreage, and I don't think anybody else would have. But when somebody's faced with 360%, 1,100%, 2,000%, 3,000% in 1 year, there has to be a cap to that. Anyway, God bless you all, and I'm glad you did the right thing, and keep doing it.
Thank you, Paul. Paul, as to your question, I'm going to ask, Randy, if you would let Mr. Williams know when you all come, because he spoke to the issue of the every 3-year requirement or guideline or whatever it is, and I think I recall that, but I don't want to restate it from memory, and it would be better just to have him come and talk about that and what they have been doing and the audits from the State Department and all that kind of stuff. Okay, we're moving on. We've got,
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
one
Yes.
more comment. There was allegations of wrongdoing and
Yes.
hiding things. and
Yes.
Absolutely, there's been nothing hidden from this council or any other board with respect to the referendum that was passed.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, and as I told Paul, and I don't think I'll have to say this to anybody else, you just can't accuse people of wrongdoing, and particularly using their names. All right, Ronnie Kindred, who's here to speak about flooding in a mobile home park. Mr. Kindred. Okay, I hope we didn't wear him out, but I'm not sure I saw him here. We have Mr. McCraney with the city ordinance parking laws. Yes, sir, come on up. And sir, if you just state your name and address, and what we're going to do is you'll have 10 minutes total, 2 5-minute segments.
I don't need that long.
Oh, okay, all right. There you go.
I've lived in about 5 other places besides Columbus. And Columbus police don't seem to be interested in enforcing their traffic laws. I had a call yesterday from Sergeant Shelton, said he ticketed people up there on 12th Avenue between, about parking on the sidewalk, blocking the sidewalk and the city property. Well, they're out there this morning doing the same thing. So apparently the people, it don't apply to certain people about tickets.
Okay. So
And
this
also
is,
the
yeah.
special enforcement, they don't do their job. There's a car over there that I reported 2 or 3 weeks ago, no wheels, no battery, and they said there's 5 different items that they can ticket it for, missing parts, no tag, and don't run. How can they determine a car will run without no wheels on it, no battery in it, sitting on the ground?
Right. Okay, a couple, any more questions, and we'll see if we can get those answered for you. So you want to know about parking and other traffic enforcement up there on 12th Avenue, is that right?
And East Highland area, there's certain streets
In East
that they
Highlands.
enforce the law, like the street I reside on, 18th Street. There's a police that rides down every day, probably around 10 o'clock, and they'll ticket a person parking between the sidewalk and the street. Well, up there on 21st, 22nd, and 23rd Street between, I'd say, 11th Avenue and 15th Avenue, they can just park all over the place and violate the law. And I call 911, and they never do nothing about it.
Okay. All right, well, good. Well, is there anything else? And we'll see if we can get you some answers.
That's all.
Okay, good. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Okay.
And we'll ask J.D. Hawk to come forward first and tell us about the parking and other violations. I will say, what's that? And yes, sir, don't go, because we may need to talk with you. Also, about the car that is abandoned, and you were talking about special enforcement, when you do call in, we record all of that. And so if you can give us the address, and maybe we can have Tiasha come down, or I'll have Eric come down and get that address from you. and we will be able to tell you if a ticket was issued, a warning, if it's been to court, you know, all that kind of thing, so that you know where it is. So do know that if you want to know the status of a complaint, we can get that for you, okay? So Eric will get that, and we'll check on the status of that one. And Major Hawk, what's going on with the parking enforcement along 12th Avenue?
Mayor and council, whenever we get complaints from citizens, if we're able to get in touch with them, we go out and investigate those parking complaints and we take action on them. As you know, and most citizens know, we do have other things to do, so parking is a low priority, but when it's brought to our attention, we do address it. We have been out on one of the locations that he talked about on 12th Avenue between 29th and 30th. 29th, yeah. 12th Avenue between 29th Street and 30th, and they have been enforcing it. I myself have been riding in the area and locating a car that I think the tires had about rotted off of it, and it's being addressed. But it helps when people call these things in. They give us a contact number so we can identify exactly what they're talking about. Sergeant Sheldon has tried to get a hold of the gentleman for 2 days and left messages, but we haven't been able to contact him.
Well, I thought he said he did talk with, I think he said he did talk.
That was in the past, when we wrote tickets in the past.
Okay.
And we did go out on one complaint and write tickets, but this most recent, when he asked to be on council, we haven't been able to get in touch with him.
Okay, well, if Eric's getting his contact info, and then maybe Sergeant Sheldon can.
We did call and leave messages.
Okay, all right. And I think Counselor Thomas has a question, too.
Yes, ma'am.
Major Hawk, if someone has a situation like the parking, should they call 911 with that? I know a lot of times people won't call 911 because it's not an emergency
Right.
as such, or is that
They
the number?
They can call the patrol division, my office, and Sergeant Sheldon will handle it. They can call 311. We get a lot from 311.
653-3000.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we'll get you to the 653-3000.
No, it's 225-3000. Is that right? Yeah.
Thank you.
That's for my office.
225, okay.
Yeah.
225-3000.
There's several ways. 911, technically, if it's blocking a road or it's disrupting a highway, then traffic, you call 911 for that. But like I said, when it comes to 911, it's not a high priority unless it's a danger to the public or something like that when it comes to parking.
I know that we do have people who are hesitant to call because they recognize, as you've said, that this is maybe a lower priority. And I just want to make sure that we have those numbers out there
Yeah.
for people who need
They can
them.
either use the 3000 number for the police department, 3300 number for the police department, I'm sorry, or the 311. And if it's an emergency, call 911.
All right. Thank you very much. And Mr. McCraney, I hope to get you some information, so we'll track that down, okay? Thank you, sir. Counselor Barnes?
Major, I'm receiving, and I'm going to bring it up to the city manager later on, at the intersection of Floyd Road and Woodrow Farm Road, used to be the CVS there. They've been parking tractor trailers there. I've been getting all kinds of complaints, and rightfully so, from the citizens up there in the Regency Park area. The special enforcement has, and I checked on where special enforcement did go up there, and they put warning on the tractor trailers. They went out, and they were removed. Well, I went up there yesterday, and I'm going to send you a picture. There's about 5 or 6 of them there. Because of the rain, I mean, they just indiscriminately park there. They know they're not supposed to be doing it. And because of the tractor trailers and the rain, it's caused a quagmire there in the area, very unsightly. And because of the water, stagnant water, it smells. So it's a constant complaint of the citizens. That's where the old CVS used to be.
Right.
And it's somewhat frustrating because special enforcement has gone out there. I have a chronology here where they've done it. and they put warning and whatever, but they insistently park, and it's just a eyesore. And the residents in that area are really, really, really upset. In fact, I got a really horrendous voice message on it, which says that the city just doesn't give a darn about it, and about how unsightly it is. So we need to really do something with that, because there's 6 of them, there were 6 parked there yesterday evening.
We have been out to that location in the past. There's certain ones we can handle. I think at that particular intersection, there were individuals that were parked on the right-of-way at some point in time. We were able to deal with those at that time, but we'll check into it again.
They're parking right in that open area, right across from the Piggly Wiggly, and they know they're not supposed to park there. They just park the vehicles, and it is really unsightly to see that many of those tractor trailers parked there. And I guess if the only way to combat it is that they get a couple of tickets that will probably bring to their recollection that they're not supposed to be doing that.
Right.
But if we can put some emphasis on that area, the citizens up there in that area would greatly appreciate it.
We'll get them back out there again.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And thank you for the job you all do.
Thank you.
And Counselor Pugh?
Major Hall, wouldn't the owners of the property have to put up signs on the property because?
There is a law that when it comes to private property, you have it posted, and the sign has to tell them what they have to do and where the car is going to actually go, and there's only certain companies that can tow off that lot, but it does have to be posted. A lot of companies have run into that problem with that law. They find a car on their property, and there's not much they can do about it.
So if we can find out who owns that property.
Yes, we can certainly find out, and Mayor Pro Tem and Council Barnes, I think we, the city, and we've talked about this Codes and Enforcement Task Force, working with Columbus Police Department. I think it's going to be important that we make property owners aware of the required posting, because on my property right now, there's a vehicle that's been there for 3 or 4 days. I don't have a sign posted. I cannot tow that vehicle off my own property. And property owners need to know that if these trucks are parking on their private property, even if the police if they go out, and the property owner meets the police out there, they still can't tow that vehicle from their own private property. Because the law prohibits them from doing it if they don't have a sign posted, and the sign has to be very specific with certain language.
Right.
I don't have that sign posted. That vehicle that's on my property right now, there's nothing I can do. And yes, you got that right. And so I think that's one of the dilemmas the police department, they're having, and our codes and enforcement people as well. And so we've got to promote that, and got to somehow determine where they can purchase these signs with that specific language and then post them on their property. And as the major said, they may not know this, the towing company, if you've got the sign posted, they've got to be certified to be able to come on that property and tow. So any towing company can, even if you have the sign posted, cannot just come and tow that vehicle. That's state law.
They have to be registered with the state, and like you said, only specific record services can do it.
And so I wanted to say that on air so that property owners will know that that law exists. I'm dealing with it right now, and others all over this Muskogee County are dealing with this same problem.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have anything else? Okay, Councilor Thomas.
Mr. City Manager or Major Hawk, either one. So where would a property owner go to get this kind of information that you're talking about?
Most of our officers have that information.
I mean, if I wanted to post a sign, who do I talk to?
Officers will tell you what the law requires, and they will also tell you what companies do it, and a lot of times those companies will assist the individual in getting the sign, to help them out with their problem. They'll tell them where to go get that sign.
Okay.
Well, and Madam Mayor, if I may, I know the news media, they're here and watching. That's a news story. It will help educate and inform the public, property owners, that you cannot tow a vehicle from your private property unless you have the state-regulated sign posted and you contact a record service that's certified to do the towing. That's a news story. Yes.
Sounds like the state legislature's got involved.
Well, we need to be able to give our citizens and property owners a place to go where they can find out about the law and see the list of record companies or who makes the sign or whatever, so that they can do what you're saying.
I agree, and we can certainly collect that information, post it on our website, but I wish the media would help us with it.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Major Hawk.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, and that concludes our public agenda. So we will move into the city manager's agenda at this time. Mr. City Manager.
All right, I was so wrapped up in that.
No, ma'am, not if you're on public agenda, but I can send somebody down to chat with you. Eric, will you go down and see what the lady would like? Thank you. Mr. City Manager.
Madam Mayor, I've got,
One of the items on the city manager's agenda, I'd like to ask him a question
Okay.
about. Okay.
Hang
If
tight,
he could just
Major
hang
Hawk.
on for a minute. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Right.
Madam Mayor, I've got 3 grants with no match being required. The first one is a $13,320 grant with no match from the Georgia Department of Economic Development Workforce Division to.
We've got a motion and second for approval. Excuse me, is there any discussion on this matter? Okay, seeing none, the item is queued for your voting. All right, and it passes.
I'll move approval 2 and 3, but read them into the record.
The second grant with no match is a factory mutual global fire prevention grant for fire EMS for fire prevention education. And the third one is adult felony drug court grant, $125,000 over 4 years with no match or in-kind for adult felony drug court.
Okay, do we have a motion and second? Okay. Counselor, is this the one, Counselor Thomas? Okay, go ahead.
I would like either Major Hawk or, I'm sorry, the sheriff is sitting here too. This number 3, the adult felony drug court, talks about the first responder program. Could you tell us what that is, what we're looking at there?
The only thing for my side, the only thing I know about this, I think Samantha Cannon wrote this one. I think if that's who got this grant started. And I know for us, that would give first responders, isn't this the way you understand it, Major Hawk? Naloxone, which is the drug that you give if you've been exposed to other drugs, which could save lives, if you know more about that.
That's correct. It's just something that the first responders can do on the scene to assist the individual and get through the problem they're having with it. Right.
If, like for a heroin overdose or something that, and I understand we will get access to some of these in the jail as well, and some of our officers will be able to have them on the street, as will theirs.
It's
So
something we
that's a
can
good thing.
do on the scene when somebody's in distress
Right.
because of their drug addiction.
And it's for drug overdose assistance, if you will.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's what was it.
All right, so we've got a motion and second. Discussion is concluded. Items 2 and 3 are queued for your vote. And it passes. They both pass.
Mayor and council, I've got some purchases. First, I've got the Winton Road streetscape Phase 1 project. It's $1.3 million.
Got a motion, is there a second? There's a second. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, the item is queued for your voting.
Second.
Sure.
Okay, wait, hold on a second, because we don't have all the votes. Okay, I only have, oh, okay, hold on a second. It didn't light up. All right, hold on a second. We need to cancel the vote. Cancel the vote. Okay, here we go. It didn't light up. We have Counselor Thomas with discussion.
Excuse me, this Winnan Road Streetscapes project is $1.3 million, which just happens to be the amount of money that we're going to be looking for in the budget. I thought that we had said we weren't going to do any capital projects until after the first of the year, until after we had, because of the delay in the collection of taxes and.
And we did say that for general fund projects. These dollars are paving, GDOT and paving. But
Well, we also said, when the finance director said we needed $1.3 million because of the resolution that we sent to the tax commissioners, she said that it was $2.5 million over all funds.
That's
And so that would include this one, I would
Yeah, I think
assume.
those are other operating funds. Does
Yeah.
somebody want to explain, like we have salaries and things in paving fund, and we have salary and sewer funds, and so we have some operating funds, not project or capital funds, but some operating funds that exist in other categories. So you want to explain?
That's
that?
correct. In the paving fund, we have the right-of-way maintenance and forestry and beautification and all of those public works and engineering functions, which are the operation side. And then we also have capital projects funds in the paving fund, which comes from GDOT and we use for resurfacing. So we're moving forward with capital projects, but not capital purchases, which would be like for a dump truck and those kind of items. This item has been rebid and has been ongoing for numerous years. We had to rebid this item.
Well, I'm going to vote no on this one, and it may be just a matter of, I have a hard time voting to spend $1.3 million on streetscape anywhere in town when we're looking at the kind of thing we're looking at. I think it sends the wrong message to our community, and I'm not going to vote to spend any money for things like this that can be delayed for whatever time. I understand what you're saying. I understand the paving fund and all that kind of stuff, but to sit here and vote to spend $1.3 million on streetscape on Winnan Road from Cedar Avenue to 13th Street, I think is the wrong thing for us to do, given our current situation.
And just to comment, the majority of the funds are coming from GDOT, and Midtown has also put in up to $400,000 as well.
Of the $1.3 million?
No, of the total project. Yes, ma'am.
We still put in $1.3 million.
yes.
No, the city's portion is not 1.3 million. I mean, that's how much we're expending, but some of that is GDOT funds from the 2 GDOT grants that we've received from them.
So how much of that is city funds?
I'd have to look. I can give you that specific number, but the city has contributed a portion for right-of-way. We've contributed a portion for the utility relocation, but I don't know exactly how much of the city's portion is for the 1.3. I'd have to get that for you. But typically, it's an 80-20 split with GDOT.
So it'd be their 80 or 20?
That's correct.
And some of that is some of our 20 is Midtown money or not?
No, the Midtown money was utilized for the design of the
Okay.
streetscape.
All right, so could any of our money, the city money portion, the 20%, be used for anything else such as operations, salaries,
In the
utilities,
paving
and light
fund
bills?
only, only in the
Only
paving.
paving fund?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have something?
I was just going to try to emphasize what you just asked, because Councilor Thomas' comments make it sound like we're spending operating funds on something else. And I don't want the public to think that we're just frivolous with the money. And some of this money has already been set aside in previous years, but it had not been spent yet.
That's correct. This is a project, like I said, that's been ongoing for several years. We went out to bid. Last year, the bids came in too high. We had to make some changes to the bid specifications, and then we put this project out for bid again. So it's been ongoing, and the GDOT grants have been in place, and the contracts for the utility relocations have been in place since last year when we originally bid the project.
When you come back and bring the breakdown of the $1.3 million, tell us how much the whole project is going to cost, because this is phase one.
That's correct. I can provide that information.
Okay. All right, anything further? Counselor Thomas?
Yeah, this says that you are asking us to authorize the execution of a construction contract in the amount of $1.3 million. And are you saying to us that's not city money?
It's coming out of the Capital Projects Fund, which it's city money with GDOT's grant money is included in that 1.3. It's not all city money. It has GDOT funds in it as well.
Well, why don't you get the breakdown?
I can provide the
Yeah.
breakdown to you.
So we'll table this until we get that information? Could
Yeah,
we
I
do
think
that?
she can pull it up in just a minute or two.
Why don't we just move that to the bottom?
Yes.
If you'll get that?
And so, Madam Mayor, moving on with, and we'll hold A until she comes back with the information. But B is Melrose Drive and Decatur Street Bridge replacements.
We've got a motion. Yeah, but then we've had a question about not wanting to spend a dime until we know about so maybe we should take them one at a time.
But to be read.
I'm sorry, so what, Tiny? There was a single motion for item A. It's been postponed. No, item A? I canceled the vote. Yeah, because we only had like 3 or 4 yeses and 1 no, and then we had people say it did not light up on my screen that there was discussion. So I canceled the vote. I only got I heard Counselor Allen do a motion for B through H. Is there a second?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a second. All right, well, go ahead and read them one at a time, so since
Yeah.
there's been a concern about.
Melrose Drive and Decatur Street Bridge replacements, state-mandated annual workers' comp fees, maintenance of the video visitation system, judicial arraignment system and security equipment, E, engine repairs for Metro transit buses, F, telephone system upgrade, G, consulting services for computer network, cable television solutions, and H, payment for inmate pharmacy services.
Okay. Counselor Thomas, do you have discussion as to those? Okay. Counselor Thomas.
I would like to pull item B for a separate vote.
Okay. Any other discussion? Counselor Thomas? D as in dog?
B as in boy.
Oh, B as in boy. Okay. So anything on C through H? Any discussion on C through H? Okay. So items C through H have been motioned and seconded, and there's no further discussion. C through H are queued for your vote.
And so with that, Madam Mayor, I'm going to go ahead and move on to...
But we've got, hold on a second, because we've got B.
Yeah, I know, we're going to come back to it. And while they do...
No, we're coming back to A.
They're coming back to A. They want to do B right now.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so item B, which is Melrose Drive and Decatur Street Bridge. We've got a motion for approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so now we've got discussion. Counselor Thomas want to talk about it.
Vote on it separately.
Okay, so she wants to vote on it separately. So it is queued for voting, there being no other discussion. And you guys can register your votes. This is item B, Melrose Drive and Decatur Street Bridge Replacement. Okay, and it passes.
And so with that, Madam Mayor, we'll come back to A while they do the research, but we've got Sheriff Donna Tompkins here and she has a budget request for the 17 budget. They were over. And then following her will be probate judge Mark D'Antonio with a similar situation. And so I'm going to ask that Sheriff Tompkins come to the mic. Well, Angelica can come and talk about it. And
Good afternoon again. So as the city manager stated, pursuant to ordinance 13-39, any department that exceeds their budget appropriations are required to come before council and request additional funding. Currently, as it stands right now, we believe we've received all of the FY17 invoices that the sheriff office has submitted to us. We've accrued those back to FY17. Currently, at this time, the sheriff is presently over budget of about $419,000. As you know, this sheriff came into office in January. So some of the cost-saving measures that were mentioned as part of the FY18 budget obviously have not had a full budget cycle to take effect. One of those things that came to council recently was the change in the pharmaceuticals at the jail. As opposed to buying those from an outside vendor, they have amended the contract with the jail clinic provider to supply those pharmaceuticals. That's actually supposed to take effect beginning the 1st of August of 2017. Another big change in the sheriff's office as it related to the budget this year was the elimination of gap time. That took effect the 1st of July. So those savings, budgetary savings within the budget, obviously will affect FY18 and not FY17. So the sheriff is here to address council concerning the budget overages that we've identified. Like I said, presently it's about $419,000. It's approximately $419,000. 419,000.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was there somebody else? Okay, Sheriff.
Hi. I have worked with Angelica with these numbers as well. First off, I'd like to say this is not really shocking to us. When I took over, we estimated that this particular budget would probably be around $400,000 over. And there really wasn't a lot that we could do about that. The changes in the gap time, that could not take effect. That was $306,000. The pharmacy bill was $50,000 over what was budgeted in this budget. As of July 1, we've made those changes, so that's $350,000 there. But I do want to go back, and we've taken steps to implement, to help in this next budget. But there is one other area where this budget is off, and where I see a huge thing, and that's going to be in the bailiffs and reserves. And the budget for this past year and the year before and the one we have now is approximately $311,000. And historically, we know that this line item is about $700,000. So that's just where we are, and we're going to continue on that same trend, unfortunately, because right this moment, I'm down so many full-time positions that I would love to fill. So if anybody's watching TV, we're taking job apps here. I would love to fill those with full-time people and have that come out of my personnel budget. But currently, we're kind of having to use reserve deputies. You'll notice them here at the Citizen Service Center. You'll notice them at the Government Center. You'll notice them doing court duties. So that's where we're having to pull from currently to meet the needs that we have. So that was $400,000 in this budget. So to come out at $400,000 when you're really looking at what should have been more like $800,000, believe it or not, is actually pretty good. So I'll be happy to take any
Can you use your
questions.
salary savings?
That was used here, correct?
Okay, good.
Yes,
Good.
that was used, and it's still around 400,000. Again, I looked at, pharmacy, $100,000 there towards the end came out at additional inmate medical services. So $100,000 was additional inmate medical services, $50,000 was inmate medication, pharmacy services. So, it all kind of still comes out to $400,000, but again, the gap pay was $306,000 over this budget, and the bailiffs and reserves was $410,000 over what was budgeted here. When I took office, that was one of the big things that we went in, and I'm like, okay, this line item's killing us, bailiffs and reserves, and I had great expectations of how we could fix that. But we went back to the '09 budget and found that we were given $600 and some odd thousand in 2009 for that line item. So it's just historically costs about $700,000 to do what we need to do as far as in the courts, providing security to these government buildings, et cetera. Go ahead.
No, I think that you want to mention about possibly changing the rate to the 15%.
Oh, yes, we do have that is set coming in October to go from a rate of $75 a session to $15 an hour. We do anticipate that, too, will save some money, but I don't want to get too optimistic at the moment because we do have full-time job positions open, and we are supplementing with reserve deputies in that area.
So it sounds like, if I understand correctly, you think that about $300,000 of the gap time will probably be saved next year?
Yes.
Okay. And about $50,000 or so, because didn't you renegotiate, didn't the
Yes,
sheriff's
pharmacies.
office-
We
Pharmacies.
renegotiated that.
And
Hopefully,
what was the savings you anticipate?
we 10 to 15% is what we're estimating.
Which would be?
$150,000 a year.
Okay, and I know a couple of other contracts, so.
Yes, one of the things that you had on your agenda there was, I noticed a payment to Lightspeed. That's to maintain the jail video visitation and the court services. That, once we've redone the video visitation, which this council's already approved, that bill from the city will go away. And that's approximately $7,000 a month. We've managed to have alternative funding, and we'll be paying that, so.
Well, let finance know as you go forward related to the bailiffs and that, and I know you do, y'all have been working
Right,
together, and we
and
appreciate it.
I've had conversations with Angelica and also the city manager in the terms of staffing just for this building here. I said, I don't have a full-time person that I can put there to help to open the doors, et cetera, et cetera. So, but it's all salaries. It's salaries. The only difference is you're not paying benefits and such to reserve deputies to
So
fill
other
those
than the
positions.
concern about bailiffs, you don't expect to have this kind of overrun?
Actually, at the moment, even with the cost savings of going to $15 an hour, until I can get my line level staffing back up to where it
Right.
needs to be, I don't, historically, this line item cost $700,000 a year. In 2009, we were funded $600,000 in that line item. And it's kind of, like you said, the budget is shrinking. The city's budget is shrinking. And so that's kind of what happened here, too. And it's gone down to $300,000, but the truth is, we know we're going to spend $600,000 or $700,000. There's just no other way to do it.
Well, let
Even
us
with
know.
full-time employees, if I was completely fully staffed, I could possibly put full-time employees to doing some of these jobs. But currently, I'm down about 25, not including the 6 that were used for rapid resolution.
Great.
So can't.
Well,
can't
thanks,
send
and I'll tell you
full-time.
one thing, we appreciate the fact that we know what it is. One of the most frustrating things for staff I know is when you say, well, it's this much of an overrun, but there's all these bills that we don't know are coming in, and it could be more, and particularly with this year, as you've sat here and listened for the past couple
We've
of
done,
hours.
I think we're doing a really good job of tracking on medical, and we also have a new health services administrator in the jail, and so far, he's been really good to communicate with us. I mean, and honestly, myself and the chief of police have discussed some issues as far as people coming into the jail and perhaps getting them out on ankle monitors, things like that. So trust me, we're working at every angle to keep the medical costs down, and they've been working with us. It's been good.
Excellent, thank you. Counselor Thomas?
Sheriff, are you saying that the majority of this 419,000 that's over is from the bailiff's line item? Do you recall how much was budgeted in that line item?
$311,000. And it cost $700 and some odd $1,000.
Okay, so this 419 is basically from that budget account?
I mean, if you put them all together, you know, you saved money here, you spent money there, but certainly that is a huge part of it. That's $400,000. We spent $700 plus thousand in a line item that we had $311,000 for, so that's $400,000 difference. Yes, ma'am.
And this is to provide
security in the courtrooms,
security
bailiffs for the judges.
the courts in the government center.
Absolutely. Also security for this building. We're even expanding their service a little bit as far as reserve deputies. That's generally a retired deputy sheriff or retired police officer that we use to even perhaps help us more in maybe just transporting prisoners back and forth from the courthouse to the jailhouse. You know, normally we've always just had our full-time officers do that, but we have a shortage, and we're using these people right now to try to fill some of that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, well, Sheriff, it looks like that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For what you've done
Yes,
to help
ma'am.
us at least get a handle on the budget. All right, let's see here. I think that that's,
We do need
oh, we do?
action.
Okay, I'm
and-
sorry.
Yeah.
I thought it was a report, not an action item. So we've got a motion to approve the request of the sheriff, Sheriff Tompkins. Is there a second? All right, and I'll cue it for voting. You may record your vote. All right, and it does pass. Thank you.
And next, Madam Mayor, the Finance Director will present the request from the probate court judge,
Okay.
Mark D'Antonio.
Yes, so the judge, probate court judge, Mark D'Antonio, is also here pursuant to ordinance 13-39. The probate court had an employee that was out on leave, and being such a, his court being such limited in staffing and having such a small staff, he did require the use of some temporary employees to help cover this employee that was out on paid leave. So his budgetary overrun for FY17 is about $3,800. So the judge is here to answer any questions from council if you have questions for the judge.
Well, I have a couple remarks, if that's okay with you all, too.
What is the total amount?
A little bit under $4,000.
38.
About $3,800. Second.
Motion and second for approval, but Judge, you've been sitting all this long time. If you want to say something, you're welcome to say something.
Well, I do want to thank you all for an opportunity to be here. I suspect that I'm going to be back talking to you all later this year about not having to spend any money, but working with me about my office space. Large is looking out for some of our most vulnerable citizens, including minor children, incapacitated adults, and people with severe and persistent mental illness. One area that I underestimated our court expenses was in guardian ad litem fees for indigent people with mental illnesses facing involuntary inpatient and outpatient commitments, and indigent minor children involving termination of their guardianships. As most of you may know, a guardian ad litem is a person appointed by the court to represent the best interests of someone that is not fully capable of representing their own interests. While I'm not going to need a budget adjustment for next year related to guardian ad litems because I have a resignation from my law clerk and I'm not going to be able to replace her at least till October, November, I do see this demand for guardian ad litem services not decreasing FY19 and beyond. However, at one perspective, even though it's affecting my budget in the negative, I can make an argument on a broader level that the probate court's appointment of guardian ad litems saves the city money in the long run. A well-represented person in a mental illness outpatient commitment hearing with a guardian ad litem acting in their best interest is less likely to end up using up resources in the jail or the Bradley Center. And that's a very important part of what we're doing. I'll be glad to talk with you about the challenges I'm facing hiring my new law clerk, or any other questions y'all may have.
All right, well, and we
Don't
got
wanna get
Counselor
out there.
Davis.
Judge, I'm gonna let you slide this time.
I appreciate it.
That's, I'm just kidding with you. No, your leadership has been great in the court. You've done a great job. Your reputation is stellar as far as managing your budget, so, you know, this is like really, really minuscule. So, thank you, and we appreciate you, and keep up the good work.
Appreciate that.
And
All right, we've got the Mayor Pro Tem.
After we vote on the 4,000, can he tell us what challenges he's having?
Sure, that's fine. All right, do we have a motion to approve? We do, and we have a second. All right, and I think we're concluded with the discussion, so we will cue it to vote.
And Madam Mayor, while they're voting, let me just acknowledge that the judge is in need of office space, and we've got to work with him to find
Yeah.
him additional space, and we're committed to doing that. I just want you to know.
Thank you, Judge. You've been so wonderful on so many things. It's a pleasure to work with you. Thank you.
Glenn's voting thing is not working.
Glenn's is not working, I guess. Glenn, can you punch it one more time and see what happens? Okay, well, we'll get that. Jeremy, if you could take a look at that, and we'll just record Counselor Davis's yes vote.
That's a yes.
And then, Judge, Mayor Pro Tem had asked you to tell us a little bit about your hiring issues.
Quite frankly, I've been having trouble keeping my law clerk associate judge position because of what I have set at the salary. Right now, I'm looking for an attorney with at least 3 years' experience admitted to the State Bar of Georgia, because I need that for them to be able to sign uncontested orders. That isn't even the full associate judge role for them. Because of that, I've had a dearth of applicants so far. I'd encourage anyone, if you know anyone that's interested in learning a lot about how the probate court works, I really need somebody to be a fiduciary. The main role of the law clerk is fiduciary compliance. We have over 800 guardianships and conservatorships that require constant monitoring, and I need an attorney or someone with a strong skill set to monitor and make sure that these incapacitated adults are not being taken advantage of. And that's the main function of my associate judge, law clerk / fiduciary compliance officer. I've had some wonderful, Rebecca Crowley, who was my associate judge, and Elena Barnett, who just left, were wonderful, but they just usually, after a few years, say, I can't afford to keep doing this for what you're paying. So but I realize that today is not the day to talk about a budget increase. So that's what's going on.
Thank you.
Has the job been rated? Do those jobs, positions get rated?
Well, it's classified right now as a law clerk, which is a G20 off of the top of my head. It's really a G21 or 22 position if I make them take on the roles of associate judge in terms of adjudicating contested matters. I have a selfish reason for wanting an associate judge, which would be someone else to help me out with weddings. As the mayor is aware, on Fridays when we are packed out the door, because a lot of other judges are too busy to perform weddings right now, I've been doing an awful lot of weddings. Going back to broader economic impact, I feel like I marry a substantial portion of folks from Alabama. They've driven over here. I encourage them to get a bite to eat in Columbus before they go back. So if I captured all that, then I probably would have the budget to pay for an associate judge, but as of right now, that's not what I'm here for. I'm just looking to replace what I've already have budgeted for FY18. I do appreciate your time.
All right, thank you so much, Judge.
You all have a good day.
All right.
Madam Mayor, with that, I'm going to ask the Deputy City Manager to come back with the Winton Road Streetscapes Phase 1 information.
Sure. Just pulled some information. This project actually started in 2007. The first GDOT grant was approved by council in June of 2007. We actually have 2 grants from GDOT. One's $1 million and one's $800,000. So the total project cost is $2.7 million, 1.8 from GDOT, 520,000 from city match, and this was an FY17 allocation, so it's prior year allocation of funds, and Midtown's contribution is 450,000. Of that, we spent 313 on engineering, 203,000 on right-of-way, 920,000 on utility relocation, and then this construction contract will complete this project.
All right, Counselor Thomas.
So of the $1,318,710 in this contract, how much of that is coming out of the City of Columbus budget? Funds.
It's really kind of all total project. It's not specific to the construction versus the engineering or the right-of-way. It's a total project cost of $2.77 million. The city matches 520, and that was a FY17 allocation, so a prior year allocation of funds. So this project has kind of been on the books for a long period of time. Like I said, we started in June of '07.
Okay.
So of the $1.3 million we're being asked to approve today, how much of that will be paid for by the City of Columbus?
That's a little difficult to answer because it's a project total. It's not specific.
Then why are we being asked to approve
Hold on, let's just keep our
$1.3 million?
voices.
Ma'am?
Why are we being asked to approve $1.3 million if that's not what the amount is?
That's the amount of the construction contract, but what you're asking me is, out of that 1.3 specifically, what city dollars are being put into that, and
Right.
what GDOT dollars are being put into that. And the project is 2.77 in total. It's not specific to construction, engineering, right-of-way, or utility relocation. It's in total. So it's difficult for me to say specifically how much of that 1.3 is city dollars.
Okay, at the bottom of the city manager's explanation for this, it says, funds are budgeted in the FY18 budget. Special Projects Capital Projects Fund, capital projects, paving fund supported capital projects, general construction, Winton Phase 1, and the number there. And you're saying to me that you can't tell me how much of the 1.3 is budgeted in the FY18 budget?
The entire amount is budgeted in a capital projects, which is not specific to FY18. It goes, obviously, it started in 2007. And so capital projects are multi-year projects. And so the city's contribution of the 520 was allocated in FY17, which went into the project costs of the total 2.77. So in the Fund 508, paving fund contributes to that fund, which is where the match came from. But the other revenue sources in Fund 508 includes the donation from Midtown as well as the grants from GDOT, which make up the total amount that's available for that project. So we've already spent and allocated funds for engineering, which is $313,000. We've already paid for the right-of-way acquisition, which was $203,000. And the majority of the utility relocation has been expended, which is $920,000. So all of those items, plus the 1.3 in construction, equal the total of the 2.77 million, with those three revenue sources as the funding for this project.
Madam Mayor, are there any other questions?
Pam, if you were to take the total cost of the project, get the percentages that the state's paying, GDOT is paying, the percentage that Winton is paying, the percentage that we're paying, we're allocated, that gives you your 100%, and take those percentages and apply it to this $1.3 million. That would be able to tell her how much is ours.
We could do that, but it doesn't necessarily split out that way when we allocate, like the GDOT funds, that part of the 800,000 was allocated specifically to utility relocation. The other $1 million is allocated to the project in total. The amount that came from Midtown was matches for those grants, and then the city's contribution paid towards some of construction and some of the right-of-way acquisition. So it's really difficult to say specifically out of each category how much funded each. I can try to do that, but it won't be an exact amount.
It'll be close enough.
All right, we have Counselor Huff.
You mentioned the 500, $500,000.
Yes, sir.
Is that all city money?
The 520,000 is the city's contribution to this project. And it came from the paving fund and an FY17 allocation.
500 of 2.7 million.
That's correct.
Yeah, 500 of the total.
That's
Okay.
correct.
So is that all the money we have invested in this?
In this particular project for the streetscapes, yes, sir.
Okay, so that'd be the 2.7, 500, 2.2?
2.2.
Somebody else spent?
GDOT and Midtown.
Okay, I think that's what we were trying to get to. I know we don't know what the percentage is today, but we have a $500,000 invested.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, let's see, we've got Counselor Henderson.
Quick question, not to belabor this, but just so, I'm missing my accountant buddy here who whispers stuff to me and helps me follow what you're saying. So from accounting process, I guess the reason that we don't isolate the different sources of those funds is it because that when we make an allocation for the entire project, then the bills sort of come due as the different phases are undertaken, and so we don't, it just sort of all goes into, it's encumbered funds that goes into that project fund.
That's correct. It's part of the total cost of the project. So
Okay.
we track the total cost of the project, and then in this particular case, I've actually itemized this project on how much we've spent on engineering right-of-way, utility
Right.
relocation.
And because I understand what Councilor Thomas is asking, I guess what I'm trying to understand is why we're unable to track it from the source of the money. And I guess it's because we've basically paid for that by putting it in the project fund, and then it's just pulled out based on what phase of the project happens from when it was first allocated in 17.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that concludes discussion, and so we do have a motion and second. And Tanya, you've got that, right? That was a while back. Okay. Good. All right, and we're ready for your vote. You may record your votes electronically. Okay, and it does pass.
Madam Mayor, that concludes the city manager's agenda.
All righty, we'll turn it over then to the clerk. And wait, we have Counselor Thomas with.
Before Director Newman leaves, I've had someone call me about some traffic signals. This particular person said, if you're driving west on Macon Road, as you come around the Edgewood shopping area there, at the street where the new fire station is, he said, as you come around Macon Road, there's a traffic light, a third traffic light mounted on one of the telephone poles on the left-hand side of the street. And he said, it is so helpful to have that there because you can't see the traffic light at the street that goes into the new fire station as you're making that curve. And he said it has been very helpful to have that light there. And his question was, if you continue on Macon Road, Winnan Road, down the hill at 13th, there's a traffic light there at Warren Williams Apartments and Henson Galleries that he said as people are coming down around that curve and down that hill with all the shrubbery that's there and everything, you can't see that light at that street. And so people start slamming on brakes once they make that turn. And his question was, would it be possible to do a similar configuration there so that people, as they're making that curve, would also be able to see the light. He said the one at the Edgewood is just terrific. He really was singing those praises, so.
I will, I'm sorry, I will pass this on to GDOT because they are planning on upgrading that signal at 13th and Warren Williams.
And if there's, I made that turn a good bit, and I know that on the right-hand side of that road, there are a lot of shrubs and that sort of thing as you're coming down, and I don't know which part of that is city property and which part of that's private property, but maybe if we could also pay some attention to those trees and shrubbery as you're coming around that corner.
We can do that because I'll just remind you that GDOT is going to upgrade that signal, and we received a grant from GDOT to install sidewalk in that area as well. So, but we'll be looking at the shrubbery and visibility and that sort of thing.
Well, I just wanted to make sure
pedestrian.
that you heard the part where this citizen was singing your praises on the Edgewood area, and said it has made a good bit of difference in that traffic flow.
I appreciate that. We'll be mindful of that in the future.
All right, we've got Counselor Woodson.
City Manager, could you follow up with me later and let me know where are we with the dip that was on Walker Street? I received a couple calls to see where are we, when is that going to be repaired? And see if afterwards we can have another after-action meeting on what has been accomplished and what's still pending. Thank you.
Okay, we've got Counselor Huff.
Mr. City Manager, Director Newman, if you would, check on Clover Lane for me. I got an email last week saying they've been complaining for a while, and there's a big hole in the middle of the street. They put a barrel out, but they hadn't had time to repair the street, and the people who live there, the residents, are complaining to me that they've been asking for a while now. So if you could check on that, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, we've got Counselor Henderson.
Very quickly, Mr. City, this is for the city attorney. I actually forgot to ask him when we were on his agenda, but just wanted an update on the Airbnb ordinance that we were going to bring just for discussion so that we could take a look at how other places or other communities are handling it. And also the appeals process for Ms. Newman. That's what made me think about it. It was a lot that somebody was trying to build on in a subdivision, and we were requiring some modifications. And we were going to put into, I think we were going to bring before the Planning Advisory Commission and then bring to us a section that would allow them to appeal that. Yeah, so if you don't have an update on it today, that's fine. If we could just expedite them and try to get them moving so that we can at least consider them.
Okay,
Thanks.
great. All right, with that, Madam Clerk, we'll turn it over to you.
Madam Mayor and members of council, on the clerk's agenda, I have a couple of memorandums. First being the Board of Honor recommendation, and I have a resolution a little later down on my agenda. Got several upcoming board vacancies on our Animal Control Advisory Board, Board of Health, Columbus Ironworks Convention and Trade Center, Public Safety Advisory Commission, and the Uptown Facade Board. I have a biographical sketch of Mr. Bruce Samuels, Councilor Barnes nominee for the Columbus Aquatic Center. Got several temporary street closing applications, one for the 4th Street Missionary Baptist Church, one for Scott's Return and the Grand Block Party of the Miracle Riders, one for September the 3rd for neighborhood celebration, and then one in September for motorcycle parking for a fundraiser. Have a resolution, excuse Councilor Baker from today's meeting.
Got a motion second for approval. All those in favor, please state aye.
I also have this resolution. The Board of Honor did meet on a request from the Greater Beulah Missionary Baptist Church to place an honorary designation in honor of Pastor C. Melly Hayes. It was approved by the Board of Honor. It's here for council's consideration.
Got a motion and second. We've got Counselor Allen.
Well, not to this resolution.
okay.
I was out on personal business on the 1st. Do I need a resolution
For a
for that?
proclamation session? No.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and second to approve the resolution related to Sixth Avenue being honorarily named in honor of Pastor C. Medley Hayes. There's no discussion. Let's see if this is queued up. No, actually, I think I have to take an oral vote. All
Right.
those, hold on. They pay the cost for the signs. Yeah.
Right.
All right, we're going to take an oral vote on the clerk's agenda. All those in favor, please state aye. Any opposed? Okay.
And then we have a resolution to change the August 29th consent and work session agenda to a regular council meeting.
Got a motion and second for approval. I know, Tanya, there was a question. I know why it's being asked, but do we need a full, to prepare a business meeting?
Now, it is my understanding from the city attorney, we can go into an executive session from a work session.
Yes, but this is changing it to a regular council meeting, which would typically have a city attorney's agenda. It would have a city manager's agenda. It would have all sorts of things. So I just want to make sure, I know that the purpose of it was so, because there was a belief that it had to be a regular meeting in order to have an executive session, and counselors want an executive session, but that can be done from a work session. So I guess, Counselor Thomas, is it your intent that you just have an executive session, or do you want a full business meeting? If you could let us know for preparation purposes.
I don't think we envisioned a full agenda with all of the agendas, if you will.
So sort of a consent agenda.
But we do need to have an executive session, and there may be, coming from that executive session, some action that the council will have to take. So whatever the wording needs to be.
I think that's good. Let's just, let's do it certainly in an abundance of caution. It may or may not be needed, but let's do it just in case. And then I'll just, the city manager stepped out, but we'll just tell him that we don't need a full business agenda. Okay. All right, all those in favor? Please state aye. Okay. Any opposed? Because I called that funny. All right.
Have minutes of various boards, Animal Control Advisory, Board of Historic and Architectural Review.
Got a motion and second for approval to include the Tax Assessors Board, the Civic Center Advisory Board, Hospital Authority, the Land Bank Authority, Planning Advisory Commission, and the Recreation Advisory Board. All those in favor, please state aye.
Then on our board appointments, on our building authority, we still need a replacement for Mr. Kel Jackson, who has resigned. On our Columbus Aquatic Center Commission, Mr. Bruce Samuels has been nominated. He can be confirmed.
We've got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye. Okay, and we did have a question of clarification. I want to make sure I'm correct. The work session is in the morning.
Yes, that was a 9 a.m. meeting.
Thank you. All right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And also, Mr. Brandon Wallace has resigned from the Aquatics Commission. We'll need a replacement for that seat. On our Circle Commission, we are working to get a replacement for Ms. Andrea Nino. On our Community Development Advisory Council, Mr. Jonathan Davis has resigned. This is District 8 representative. We'll need a replacement for that seat. On our Keep Columbus Beautiful Commission, we're working with the commission to get a recommendation on a District 2 seat. District 7, Councilor Whitson, Ms. Phillips is unable to serve, so we'll need a replacement for that.
Yes, Keep Columbus Beautiful, they're going to give me a name, somebody on that.
For Mr. Nathan Rogers' seat, Mr. Oz Roberts has been nominated as.
We've got a motion. Is there a second? All those in favor, please state aye.
For Ms. Rebecca Covington, Ms. Courtney Laughlin has been nominated. She can be confirmed.
Got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
And for Ms. Sarah Tinsley, Mr. Carlos Williams.
We got a motion and second for approval. All those in favor, please state aye.
And our Public Safety Advisory, Councilor Allen is working on a replacement for Mr. Lamar Beck. And on our Recreation Advisory, Mr. Gary Bruce has resigned. We're working on a recommendation for that seat, as well as District 7, Ms. Tracy Belk. On our Youth Advisory Council, we have the nominees for Districts 1, 7, and 10.
We've got a motion. Is there a second? All those in favor, please state aye. Okay, we've got Counselor Henderson.
I'd just like to ask the clerk if she'd check and confirm that Mr. Parker had not already been appointed through some other means. I saw his parents here for the swearing in the other night, and we haven't done our part yet, so I just didn't want to put somebody on there that's already on there.
We'll check.
Thank you.
All right. If there's nothing further, that does conclude our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, we've got Counselor Barnes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I guess I have to address this to the Deputy City Manager. I discussed earlier that area up there where the CVS pharmacy, where the trucks are. Also, it's that back area. People are using that area as a dump site. Special enforcement has gone there, but this is something that's going to have to be monitored somehow because the people are just dumping trash. And so I want to use this as, here's the city manager. Didn't mean to interrupt your eating, but as we all have to do in such a long session. I want to put this as a referral, that area, where all the trucks are. We come up with some kind of a plan. I know special enforcement, I want to hear something from special enforcement, how we're going to address that. It's not only that, but it's the people are using that as a dump area, that little back area there. And I stopped and I checked out both areas yesterday. So we need to come up with a plan. I want to hear a plan that we can address those trucks and that area back there as far as it being a dump site.
Okay. I'm sorry?
I was going to just say that we will certainly do that as a referral. You know, we are trying to get this codes and enforcement task force off the ground, and Deputy City Manager Lisa Goodwin at the last meeting gave you a brief update and all of the various city departments involved. But when we've got a hot spot like that, and I'll just refer to it as a hot spot, I expect this codes and enforcement task force members from the task force to monitor those hot spots, those sites like what you're talking about. And as I said, when Deputy City Manager Goodwin did this update, they assume that we only work weekdays, and we do right now. But this task force will work some weekends, and they'll have to figure out which weekends. But we are going to, we're going to pursue those concerns. Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
And a second. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Great, we're adjourned. See you next time. Thank you.